Welcome to Moonlit Publishing.
Chapter 1. As the cold metal of the payphone receiver pressed against my ear, my heart slammed harder than it ever had before, because the voice on the other end was about to shatter everything I thought I knew about my own family. "Pick up already," I hissed through gritted teeth, fingers trembling as I gripped the ancient cord like it might snap and cut me off from the only lifeline I had left. Imagine this, a row of 9 battered payphones, the only way 100 she-wolves, ages 10 to 19, could reach the outside world. No cell phones allowed. Ever. Saturday off campus meant chaos here, girls jostling for their precious 10 minutes, unless you'd screwed up. Like me. Motley caught me whispering with Chain in class, so my time? Slashed to 5 brutal minutes. And those minutes started ticking the second the coins hit the slot, not when someone finally answered. The line crackled to life. "Hello." Relief flooded me, sharp and hot. Finally. "Look, I don't have long, so listen. I'm good, grades solid, tell Mom I'm eating, I miss you all like crazy. Your turn. Mom and I are fine, we miss you every second, can't wait for holidays. Oh, and we moved." The world tilted. "What?" "Yeah," Johnny said casually, like she hadn't just dropped a bomb. "Mom went back to her old territory, the one from before Dad. I'll write the details, you're obviously rushed. Love you, little Lena. Stay out of trouble." Even through the shock, her old nickname warmed me like sunlight on fur. "Love you too." Click. I stepped aside, legs shaky, letting the next girl shove past. I dropped onto the usual bench, Johnny's words sinking claws into my mind. Mom had finally done it, moved on from Dad's death. Part of me smiled for her. The selfish part? Grinned wider. Her old pack meant they were closer now. Visits. Real ones. Maybe even weekends together. Who's done what? Chain's voice cut through, bright and curious. She plopped down beside me, red hair blazing like wildfire under the sun, green eyes sparkling with that endless mischief. "My mom," I said, still dazed. "She's moved on from losing Dad." Chain tilted her head. "How do you know?" "Gia said they went back to Mom's old pack." She whistled low. "That's huge. It's been, 11 years? I nodded, throat tight. I wasn't even 8 when he died. Losing your mate, that's a wound that never really heals. You have no idea." Memories crashed in nights I'd pressed my ear to Mom's door, hearing those raw, broken sobs echo like a wolf howling at an empty moon. Her grief had painted our house in shadows. Chain nudged me. "Oh, and you do know." I blinked back to her. "Not firsthand, obviously. But we're top mates are half your soul. Losing that? It's like ripping out your own heart and trying to keep beating anyway." She smirked. "Well, I hope I never find mine." I rolled my eyes. Here we go. Why tie myself to one guy who'll boss me around? No thanks. I'd rather enjoy all these charming options walking by. She trailed off, flashing a freckled wink at a passing guy. He grinned, but kept moving. Chain sighed dramatically. "See? Adventure everywhere. Too early for your rebellion speech." "Fine. Tea? Coffee? Tea. Calmer vibes today." We linked arms and wandered off, window shopping boutiques, the normalcy almost soothing the ache. Mail call. I waited, silent, heart picking up speed as names ticked by alphabetically. De Laurentiis. Finally. I snatched the parcel and bolted to my room, Chain right behind like a shadow. "What did you get?" She slammed the door, eyes gleaming. I tore into the brown paper. A warm, chocolate-sweet scent hit me instantly, childhood in one breath. Brownies. My old favorite. "Ooh, treats." Chain dove in. I didn't mind. "Yeah, brownies." But my fingers found the letter next. I tucked my legs under me and read. "Little Lena. Sorry for the delay, life, you know. Mom misses you so much she baked these herself this morning. Then dragged me to the mall for your favorite perfume. This move woke her up, Lena. About the move, we should have told you sooner. The old place held too many ghosts of Dad. It was time. Alpha Trenton fought it, especially after I turned down his proposal for the 5th time, but he caved. Mom's working again. I'm back in school and seeing someone new. He's serious, a bit stiff, but handsome, smart. Can't wait for you to meet him at holidays. The house is perfect. P.S. bought your train ticket to the new pack. We'll pick you up. Take care of it. Love always, Johnny. I read it twice more, stomach twisting. Chain frowned. What's wrong? 2 months. My voice cracked. They've been at this new pack for at least 2 months, and I'm just now hearing? They never visited, never invited me for a weekend. Now Mom's old pack is close. And they said nothing. Her eyes widened. What? I never wanted this school. I didn't ask to be shipped here. She nodded. We both knew that ache of being tucked away, half forgotten. Wanna look at memes? She offered brownies like a peace treaty. I nodded. This school sucks. We curled up, sneaking Chain's hidden phone. Her Grandy actually cared enough to send one. Videos played, but my mind stayed stuck on that letter. Chain softened. It's not what you're thinking, Evaline. They love you. Probably didn't want to overwhelm you. That house was the last piece of your dad. Tears burned. I missed him, sure, but right now? Betrayal stung worse. 2 months of silence on something this big. Hey, come on. She pulled me into a hug. It'll be fine. Let's run, clear your head. I nodded, crumpled the letter, tossed it in the bin, and followed her out, the dorm door clicking shut behind us like the end of one chapter, and the start of something I never saw coming. Chapter 2. Are you sure you won't come? I asked as I put on my warm socks. I hate knowing you're going to be stuck here for a whole week by yourself. I'll hardly be by myself. Chain chuckled as she handed me my boots. Okay then, I hate that I'll be stuck there for a whole week alone. I said, trying to guilt her into coming. Girl, go. Go have fun with your mom and sister, get the new lay of the pack, and let me know if there's any cute guys so I can join next time. She smirked. Well, last attempt. You could come with me and find a cute guy for yourself. Tempting. But seriously, Evaline, I'll be fine. I'm more worried about you. Enjoy your Thanksgiving and call me if you need anything. I grabbed my luggage and bid her one final goodbye before I went on my way. I followed the crowd to the shuttle bus into town. There, I caught a train to a small station not even 30 minutes away in a town called Peak Ridge, where Johnny said she or Mom would be picking me up. I expected the train ride to be much longer than it was, and I was practically running off the train when I caught sight of my mom on the platform waiting for me. Any animosity I had prior to traveling out here had seemingly disappeared. With my luggage trailing behind me, I sprinted forward and barreled into my mom. She wrapped her arms around me and smiled. Oh, my darling Evaline, how I've missed you, she said before releasing me enough to step back and look at me. Her voice hit my ears, and I looked up into the familiar face of an old memory. My mother was truly back. She looked happy and healthy. No longer was she struggling with the weight of her past, recovering from difficult nights and no sleep. Come on. I can't wait to show you the new place. She smiled as she grabbed the handle to my suitcase and pulled it along. I followed her eagerly, entranced by the woman I remembered from so long ago, now standing right in front of me. She placed my bag into the trunk and then we drove off. As we rode through the town, Mom excitedly pointed everything out, and finally we reached a nice 2-story house. She turned off the car and I stepped out. I stared at the brick house. The parts that weren't whitewashed brick were painted a gray color, and a thick forest served as the backdrop to this lovely country home. Well, come in, come in. I'll give you a tour before I show you to your room. She smiled giddily. Oh right, this is my home now, I thought to myself. Great, I said. A small smirk was all I could muster. I couldn't help but feel awkward, and worse, that underlying sadness of feeling neglected at the school and being left out was beginning to rise again. We stepped inside and I looked at everything. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. The ceilings are 10 feet, I think. There's a bonus room that I use as an office. This is the kitchen and breakfast bar, and right around here is the formal dining room, she said smoothly as I followed behind her through this new house. The door just over there leads to the garage, and if we step this way we'll find ourselves in the living area. She smiled. I simply nodded. It's really nice, Mom. In fact, it really was. Well, she sighed and took a seat onto the plush-looking sofa. She patted the cushion next to her, so I left my rolling suitcase there and sat next to her. The thing is, I had decided enough was enough. I had to move on, or I knew I'd just waste away there. I just looked at her. For years, Johnny, and I tried to tell her exactly that, but of course she wouldn't hear it. Now don't get me wrong. It was hard, probably the most difficult thing to do, knowing what I had there and knowing your father is buried there. She took the moment to wipe a stray tear before she shook her head. The moon goddess knows how that man tested me at times, but of course he was the love of my life. He was my mate, and therefore I don't think I will ever truly just get over your father. But I had to leave that place. It got to a point where it just held more bad memories than good ones. I knew she was referring to the hardships she faced the year before Dad died, followed by his passing and her subsequent years of depression. Plus, I just missed home. She added at the end. This is the pack my mother was born into. She moved away when she was 18 to go to school for nursing. Of course, she went and graduated, but soon after starting her first shift as a nurse, she met a guy and then had Johnny. 7 years later, she met her mate, and almost immediately I came into the picture and they got married. A few years before, my parents talked about moving back here. My dad had hoped my mother's childhood hometown would cheer her up. It seems as if it did work. Unfortunately, he isn't here to witness it. Well, Mom, this place is great, and I really can't wait to meet everyone. I'm so glad to hear it, baby. The Alpha has invited us to have dinner at the Pack house with his family. I don't know if you know yet, but your sister is dating the Alpha's son, Cesario. She mentioned she was seeing someone. I commented. I was hardly surprised to find out about Johnny dating a prominent male in the Pack. That's all she ever dates. Those two look so good together. He is very respected around here, and their family is quite wealthy. Mom, I chastised her. I'm just saying, Johnny can't do much better than him, so she needs to stop playing her games before she drives him away like the others. Are they mates? I asked. People in their position don't always marry for love, dear. They marry for influence, and Johnny, well, we both know she is a force to be reckoned with. She winked. I shook my head. My mother's words rang with truth. It isn't unheard of, Alphas arranging marriages for their sons. And despite not being an Alpha's daughter, Johnny's always had a knack for getting what she wants. That's what makes her such a successful attorney. That, and the fact that she's gorgeous. Men tend to notice her immediately. Poor guy. I sighed. Anyways, shall I show you to your new bedroom? She asked as she quickly moved on. Of course, you can decorate it any way you'd like. I just want you to love this place as much as I do. I got up and followed her once more. Where's that pesky little sister of mine? I hopped up off the sofa and my sister ran over and hugged me. Little Lena, I missed you so much. I want to say how much I missed her as well, but when I inhaled, I got a whiff of her scent. God, what kind of perfume are you wearing? I asked. It smells amazing. The fragrance was light and just barely there, but enough that it drew me in. I think I went with a classic fragrance this morning. I nodded. I would definitely need to pick some up before I head back to school. We sat down and caught up. Johnny apologized for not mentioning the move or her new man. Cesario Minichi, she smiled. To be honest, I've never liked a guy so much before, and get this, I actually had to pursue him. You mean your charms didn't lure him in? Are you sure you were trying hard enough? I teased. Haha, you're such a comedian. But in the end I got him, and that's all that matters. So when do I get to meet the guy? I asked as I wiggled my eyebrows up and down playfully. Johnny laughed. You're such a character. Anyways, he should be coming by a little later. I wanted to go out to dinner for your homecoming, but Mom insisted on cooking for you. I blushed a bit. You know I'd prefer a home-cooked meal rather than going out to some fancy restaurant. I was telling Johnny about my antics at St. Magdalene's, and we were both cracking up when our mom entered the room wearing scrubs. Sorry, girls, she said as she began putting her hair into a low ponytail. Looks like I'm needed back at the hospital. Do you really have to go, Mother? Gia asked a little pointedly. Mom simply shrugged. It's the full moon. It's making all these women go into labor and delivery is short-staffed. Plus, I am the one who started most recently, so I'm the go-to person. She filled us in before turning to me. I'm sorry I have to miss your homecoming dinner, Evaline. I'll make it up to you. In the meantime, I went ahead and ordered Chinese food. The money's on the counter. Tell Cesario hello for me, Johnny. Johnny just looked at her as she walked out the door in a rush. What was that all about? I rounded on my sister. Could you have been any more difficult towards Mom? Yes, I could have. Mind telling me what's bothering you? I asked. I think that she's lying, Johnny stated. Gia, we know the moon affects things. I sighed. Sure, that part is true. But honestly, Lena, for the past couple of weeks, Mom's been spending a lot of her time at the hospital, going in extra early, staying really late, picking up extra shifts. Lena, Mom bought this house with cash from selling the old one, and she owns her car, so she isn't exactly in need of money. What are you trying to say? I think Mom is seeing someone, she finally said. Chapter 3. You can't seriously believe Mom would be seeing somebody. I stumbled through my words. The thought of my mother with someone other than Dad seemed ludicrous, and I couldn't even form the proper words to express it. How else do you explain her behavior? Johnny asked as she regally folded her arms and looked at me for a reply. When I came up with nothing, she continued, Little Lena, you haven't been here. Yes, the move was a big thing and it seemed to help Mom, but it wasn't until she went back to work that she made her complete transition. I could only stare mindlessly. Johnny sighed. As you know, I managed to put myself through law school and now I'm one of the best attorneys in all of upstate New York, and I wouldn't be the best if I just ignored the facts and evidence. I shook my head. I was just about to tell her it was definitely hard to believe, but I knew Gia must be right. Then the doorbell rang. That must be the food. I'll go and pay, she said, leaving me to sit on the sofa and wonder about Mom's life. I'm not sure if it was the thought of my mom with somebody or what, but soon my heart rate picked up and my stomach began to knot. I completely forgot you were coming by, I heard my sister say softly. I rolled my eyes. Must be her new guest. When I heard them entering the living room, I stood up to greet this powerful future leader that my sister says is a complete stiff. But when I turned to greet him, I froze completely. A nanosecond went by and my wolf began to stir. Then I breathed in and took his scent in. The smell was intoxicating with its deep, warm notes. Now my wolf was clawing to come forward. He cleared his throat and straightened himself up just a bit before he extended his hand. You must be Evaline. I've heard so much about you. He smiled at me. It is truly a pleasure to finally meet you. His voice was like a soothing lullaby. Mate, my wolf howled with delight. Lena, Johnny whispered sharply, clearing my head. I reached out and took his outstretched hand. A warm current flooded my veins, sending a pleasurable tingle all the way through me. My heart beat faster and I willed my brain to come up with something to say. Nice to meet you too, Cesario. The sound of the doorbell made me pull my hand away. This couldn't be happening. This handsome man couldn't be my mate. He's my sister's boyfriend. As Johnny once more went to pay for the food, I turned away. I couldn't look at him knowing he's my mate while he belongs to my sister. The guilt of the situation was becoming increasingly heavy. Please don't turn your back on me, he pleaded softly. I faced him once more and nearly drowned in the gaze of his stunning smoky green eyes. Cesario's POV. Don't forget we have dinner plans at my mother's house this evening. My sister Evaline is coming home for the Thanksgiving break, and I want you to make a good impression. I've called your assistant and asked her to send your gray suit to the cleaners to get pressed. Johnny informed me. It should be hanging in your closet by now. While beautiful and driven, Johnny De Laurentiis genuinely frustrates me beyond all reason more times than not. I knew from the moment I met her that she was just another ambitious face, one amongst many who want to fill the future Luna seat. Somehow she used that silver tongue of hers to get me to ask her out. She was clever, I'll give her that, and of course it always looked good on the future leader if he had a beautiful partner on his arm. But as soon as my parents met her, my father became completely enamored with her, and all I've heard for the last 2 months is how fine a Luna Johnny will make one day. Are you listening to me, Cesario? I bit my tongue and smiled. Of course, dear. Good. I've got to go. I'll see you soon. Try not to be late, she said before she gave me a quick kiss to both cheeks, presumably not to ruin her makeup. I sighed and closed the door behind her. I needed a release. I would have to settle for a drink, considering Johnny has a very strict timeline for our relationship, and seeing as we've only been dating for 2 months, she wasn't even trying to hear about anything else. As I poured the expensive whiskey into my glass, I shook my head. How had I, Cesario Minichi, let a woman come in and run my life? I let the smooth liquid run down my throat, relishing the burn as it made its way down. Something is going to have to change. I took small swigs of the brown liquor as I began to get ready for the evening. I looked at the gray designer suit and thought against wearing it, but the thought of having to pick out another entire outfit and possibly being late wasn't worth it. As much as Johnny irks me at times, no doubt she knows what she's doing. Perhaps that's exactly what I do need in a partner. I looked down at my watch and figured I needed to leave now before I became late, so I went into my garage. Once there, I lovingly looked over at my favorite car. She was under a cover, so I couldn't really see it, but I made a silent promise to give her a spin soon before I got into my Mercedes. It didn't take long before I got to the De Larena's house. I worried that perhaps I should have brought wine. I suddenly felt nervous and anxious all at once. Johnny had never had this effect on me before. Why all of a sudden? I brushed it off and rang the doorbell. Once the door opened, Johnny greeted me with a smile I had never seen before on her face. I completely forgot you were coming by. I looked at her skeptically as she moved to let me in. I removed my coat and hung it on the hanger before Johnny led the way to the living area. With every step I took, my wolf arose, growing more antsy to come forward. And then that's when my eyes fell on a small female mate. Although this girl and Johnny seemed very similar, there were slight differences that I could easily detect. Both were striking beauties, but where Johnny's is much more fierce, this girl's beauty is much softer, warmer, and more welcoming. She is just a bit shorter, and her long brown hair had a lighter tint to it. Johnny has these intriguing eyes, one is more green while the other is more brown. However, these perfectly even hazel eyes, which at the moment seemed to have a lovely shade of brown to them, were a product only of this new girl. I knew I was staring and I needed to fix myself. I cleared my throat and composed myself before stepping forward to introduce myself. You must be Evaline. I've heard so much about you. It is truly a pleasure to finally meet you. And indeed it was. For years I've searched for my mate. I had finally given up on my search just before the De Laurentiis moved here. That's why I was reluctant about Johnny. I knew she wasn't my mate, but I also didn't want to commit to just anybody. Lena, Johnny whispered sharply. Her words seemed to pull her sister out of a slight daze and her pretty eyes fell on me. She reached her small hand out and took mine. That bond instantly intertwined us together with just one touch, and I knew right then and there that I would stop at nothing to have my mate. As the warm currents ran through my body from her touch, I just stood there enjoying the moment, having her eyes locked onto mine. After a moment she finally spoke. Nice to meet you too, Cesario. My name fit well on her tongue as it expertly rolled out of her lips. What I wouldn't give to hear my name once more from her alluring voice. The sound of the doorbell caused her to pull her hand away from mine, and as Johnny went to see who was at the door, I was left alone with Evaline. Unfortunately, the first shot she got, she turned away. Please don't turn your back on me. I almost begged. Even my wolf was whining at her turning away from us. Was our mate rejecting us? But thankfully she turned back around. Once her eyes were looking into mine once more, I relaxed and smiled softly. Her large hazel eyes were full of wonder and sadness, but all I could do was admire her. Food's here, Johnny's voice rang through the house. We should probably go and eat, she simply said before walking out of the living room. I followed close behind her. She could have suggested anything, and I would have eagerly followed her lead. Chapter 4. Cesario's POV. I didn't know where their mother was, and I honestly didn't care at the moment. I sat and ate the Chinese food as the sisters interacted. I could sit here and watch Evaline talk, smile, and laugh all night long. She was something special. Even as I spent the majority of my time observing her, I also noticed that her presence had an effect on others. Even Johnny, the woman I've come to know as a cold-hearted powerhouse, was now enjoying herself, laughing without a care in the world and simply being more enjoyable in general. When dinner was over, we retired to the living space. I took a seat on the large sofa, and Evaline took up the entire love seat as she let her body lounge about gracefully. After Johnny placed a movie on, she took a seat next to me. She seemed as if she wanted to get close, but I pulled back. Not now, Johnny. I'm not feeling so well. She looked at me briefly before silently moving to the other side of the long sofa. As the sisters watched the movie, I watched Evaline. I took in every smile and every slight movement. As the credits began to roll, I noticed her yawn. She looked adorable as her eyes squeezed shut and her nose crinkled up, her body stretching out like a cat. Suddenly, my mind began to wander what her wolf could possibly look like, or better yet, what it would be like to run with her. Suddenly, Johnny moved, and my thoughts were gone as I was pulled back into reality. I sighed regretfully. As much as I wished to stay longer, I knew my mate would have been tired from her trip. I stood up. I think it is time for me to turn in for the night, I said to both of them, and then walked over to Evaline. I took her hand in mine. Dearest Evaline, it was such a pleasure to meet you, and I hope we get to meet again soon. I risked my forwardness by going a step further and bending down to place a kiss upon her knuckles. When I looked up at her, she was smiling at me. Her smile made her warm eyes gleam. In that moment, I knew that this smile was mine, it only belonged to me. It was my undoing. Johnny, I said, getting her attention. She turned to face me and smiled. I merely continued. A word, please. Johnny rose from the sofa, and together we walked to the front door. Thank you for coming out tonight and showing my sister such respect. It really was my pleasure, I admitted. Now, I wanted to say something before I leave, and I need you to listen to me, all right? She nodded. I stood up straight and held her eye. We are over. Excuse me. Us, I gestured between her and me. Done, finished. I don't want to be with you. Therefore, I am now ending things between us. I am breaking up with you. I said it in every single way I knew how. I didn't quite know how she hadn't understood me. She threw her head back and laughed heartily. When she finished, she looked me straight in the eye, a fire burning behind her eyes. No, I refuse to allow this. Now go home. You said you weren't feeling well, so I will assume this little outburst from you is due to your health. I will see you on Thursday for Thanksgiving dinner. I looked at her, but she merely turned and walked away, silently dismissing me. I grabbed my coat and let myself out. I don't know how much more clear I need to be, but I do not want to be with Johnny, nor do I want her to know I have a mate. I couldn't even begin to imagine what Johnny would do if she found out I have a mate in her own sister. Right then and there, I knew I would have to protect my beautiful Evaline at all costs by keeping her identity a secret from everyone until the time is right. This included her sister and possibly even her mother as well. Instead of going back to my penthouse, I made my way over to the pack house. Upon my arrival, a few pack members said hello and inquired about Johnny. I smiled and nodded, but kept a lock on anything related to her. Cesario, my son, what brings you by? My father asked as I walked into his office. My mother had heard his voice and entered the office as well. Hello, Mama. I greeted her with a kiss on each cheek before I offered her my seat. I just came by to inform you both that I have called things off with Johnny. I knew I couldn't simply end things with her without letting my parents know what's going on. They are still the leaders of this pack for a few more years. Why? My father questioned. I do not love her. What does that have to do with anything? Cesario, do you realize the kind of leader she will make? His tone was almost pleading before it hardened once more. Son, I already went to the council and offered her name for your bridal candidacy. I winced a little at the weight of my father's authority, but continued to stand my ground. Then you must go and withdraw her name, I said smoothly. In actuality, I was furious. How dare my father go behind my back and start selecting potential brides for me? I will not. The bridal candidacy is not needed. as I have found my mate," I stated coolly. My mother elatedly jumped up and instantly embraced me. "Who is she?" "Oh, Cesario. When may we meet her?" "I promise I'd love for you to meet her, Mama. Truth is, I've only just met her myself, and I wish to get to know her before I introduce her to the family and the pack as my mate. I would hate to overwhelm her with so much all at once." My father made a grumpy sound. "Despite who you think I should marry, the fates have chosen a bride specifically for me, and I would rather step down and relinquish my role as the next leader of this pack than to be parted from my mate." My father remained sulking in silence whilst my mother hugged me once more. "I am so happy for you, and I'm sure she's lovely." I smiled. "From what I could make out, she is. She seems kind and full of life with a soul as beautiful as her face." After talking for a while longer, I finally made it back to my apartment. I showered and lay down with a permanent smile etched upon my face. I closed my eyes and I could still see the perfect face of my future Evaline. Chapter 5. "Are you sure you're going to be all right by yourself?" Johnny asked as she put her coat on. "I'm sorry to have to leave so suddenly, but my client is insistent that we have a midnight meeting with her ex-husband about their shared assets." "Go, I'll be fine. I'll probably just go to bed anyway." "I feel horrible about leaving," she pouted. "Go," I said for the millionth time. Mom should be coming home soon anyway. I pushed her out of the house. She hugged me, and I felt so guilty. "I love you, little Lena, and I'm so happy you're finally here." She smiled down at me. "I know it sounds cheesy, but I seriously feel like everything is finally right, no?" Her kind words pulled my heartstrings even tighter with guilt. Johnny had done so much for me growing up, and how do I repay her? By falling for her boyfriend. "I love you too, Gia," I said. As the words left my mouth, I made a silent promise. I knew no matter what, I would have to avoid Cesario at any and all costs. I stood in the doorway and watched my sister drive away. When she was out of sight, I let my guilty tears come forward. I ran into the kitchen and went straight to the house phone before I dialed the one person I could talk to about this. She answered groggily. "I need you," I cried. There was a small pause before she spoke. "I'm on my way." After I called Shane, I calmed down a bit. I had gotten into a more comfortable outfit and took off. After walking to the train station, which was about a 10-minute walk from my mom's new house, I sat and waited for the train to arrive. I didn't have to wait long, as the school wasn't too far away from here. When the train arrived, I instantly spotted my best friend, and she pulled me into a tight hug, where I immediately lost it. We just stood there, her letting me get every single tear out. I finally stopped and pulled away so I could clean my face. "Thanks for coming," I said. We had begun walking back to the house, and I now had one of her suitcases rolling behind me as we walked. "I heard you and knew I needed to be here with you." "What happened, Evaline?" she asked, her face and words full of worry. I shook my head. "I found my mate this evening." I smiled sadly. "That is horrible," she teased. Her smile was one of hope instead of its usual amusement. Her words caused a chuckle to come out. A fresh crop of tears started up, and I stopped walking. "He's Johnny's boyfriend, Shane. I can't be with him," I whispered. Once more, she enveloped me in her arms and let me get it all out. The two of us stood in the middle of the deserted street, hugging, and finally, I composed myself. "I'm sorry," I said as I grabbed her suitcase once more and began walking again. "It's okay. Does Gia know?" I shook my head. "So, tell me everything there is to know about him," she said as she wiggled her eyebrows up and down. I smiled at her before I took a deep breath to calm myself down further. "His name is Cesario, and he's the son of the leader here," I admitted. An image of him kissing my hand and looking up at me with his amazing eyes filled my head and enraptured my soul. I fought hard to suppress the growing urge to smile. And? I asked. "What's he like?" "Tall, built, handsome, what?" she sounded. "I need some details, girl." I blushed a little. "All of that and more," I sighed. "Oh, Jane, he's absolutely perfect. He's the most handsome man I've ever met. He's well-mannered and seems well-read. He was so nice to me, and he even openly acted on our bond." "What, how?" He kissed my hand, I admitted lovingly. It might have been something small to others, but to me, he may as well have openly kissed me in front of my sister. Okay, that is seriously romantic. She smiled. We reached the house, and I noticed my mother's car sitting in the driveway. Crap, Mom's here. No one knows about Cesario being my mate, and Mom is dead set on seeing Johnny getting married to him, as he is her boyfriend. Just tell them, Lena. She insisted. I shook my head. You don't understand. When my sister wants something, she always gets it, and I know she wants to be a leader in this pack. Even if she's my sister, I don't know what she'd do to achieve her goal. Evaline. Promise me, Chain. I cut her off. Promise you won't say anything to anyone about what you've learned tonight. She gave me a serious stare before she nodded. I promise. I held up my hand and held out my pinky. I needed her to agree to our sacred pinky promise. She twisted her pinky around mine and repeated herself. I promise that I'll keep your secret. Then, with our pinkies still connected, we both kissed our thumbs, essentially sealing in her promise. We continued into the house. There you are, I was just about to go looking for you. My mom said. Sorry, I went to pick up my best friend from the train station. I invited her to join us for Thanksgiving. I admitted. Mom, this is my best friend Chain. Chain, this is my mom. It felt so odd to have two people I've known for so long just now meeting each other for the first time. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, honey, and welcome to our home. She smiled. Why don't you two go upstairs? It's getting late. Chain and I made our way upstairs and disappeared into my new room. Nice house, Chain commented. This isn't my home, not yet at least. Give it time, she offered sympathetically. It'll grow on you. I simply looked at her and nodded. The truth was, I didn't want it to grow on me. I wanted to hate this house and this town. It would give me a reason to stay away, and maybe I could forget all about Cesario. Chapter 6. The next morning, despite how badly I wished to sleep in, my internal clock just wouldn't allow me to sleep past 7. I rolled over and found Chain already wide awake as well. Mornin', doll. She smiled, sleep well. Yes. I yawned, and then I woke up. She chuckled, and instantly the smell of fresh coffee and pastries hit my nose. Guess my mom's still here. We both got out of the shared queen-size bed, and I stepped into my slippers while Chain simply pulled on some thick socks. We talked and laughed as we made our way downstairs, and upon entering the kitchen, we were faced with my sister Johnny. My stomach fell as I suddenly halted. Good morning, little Lena, and you must be Chain. Gia smiled. I was unable to talk as guilt suddenly filled my throat. Is this what life will be like from now on? Constantly filled with guilt whenever I see my own sister? I wondered sadly. Yeah, I'm Chain, my best friend said as she stepped forward, filling my awkward silence with her normally cheery self. Johnny, right? I've heard so much about you. Please, just Gia. I feel like we're practically sisters. At that, my head snapped up. It's one thing to have to allow my sister to continue dating my mate, but it is another thing entirely to just let her steal my best friend as well. In that instant, I stepped forward and found my voice. What are you doing here? I thought you were going to be in New York. Johnny didn't read too much into my question, as she simply went back to the breakfast bar and finished plating the donuts and tarts. Well, I figured Mom would be out, and I felt horrible knowing you were going to be here. Well, I assumed you'd be by yourself, but I'm also glad your friend is here to keep you company. More like keep me sane. I smiled and instantly stopped as I realized my slip of words. Johnny only laughed. You can say that again. Living with Mom isn't the easiest thing in the world. Chain and I looked at each other with amusement and relief. Johnny assumed I was talking about Mom when really I was talking about being around her. Either way, I've brought you breakfast sweets, or I can pick up something else if you'd like. I sighed. We're fine, Gia. Go back to work. You really don't have to run back here just for me. I'm not the same little girl you remember. She walked back over to me and embraced me as she looked down at me sweetly. Fine, she sighed, then turned to grab her purse. The fridge is stocked, as is the pantry. You girls be safe, and I suppose I'll see you come Thanksgiving. I had to be honest. Knowing she'd be out of town until Thanksgiving was a relief. Chain and I nodded, and we then watched her walk to the front door. She put a hand on the knob and then turned around. Chain, I will let the Alpha know you will be joining us for dinner on Thursday. And seeing as I won't be back in time, Lena, do you think you could stop off at the store sometime this week? Sure thing, what do you need? She grimaced. I promised to bake. Now I laughed. You can't bake anything to save your life. Hell, you can't even cook. I know, she pouted. But Cesario's mom is amazing in the kitchen, and I really need to win her over. I kind of feel like she's never really liked me. Fine, I sighed. The sound of his name being spoken had caused my wolf to stir, and I was filled with agitation knowing it was my sister who spoke it. You're the best. She smiled and opened the door. Remember that always. I shouted after her. I then turned to face my best friend and found her popping a donut hole into her mouth. What? She asked. Tension makes me hungry. I shook my head and joined her at the breakfast bar. Johnny's POV. I'm sorry I'm late. I smiled as I approached the table. I immediately hugged my lunch date and kissed both of his cheeks as a sign of respect. Please have a seat, he gestured before taking his own seat. Wine, please. I pulled open the menu as he poured the white wine into my glass. So tell me, my dear, what is this nonsense I'm hearing about Cesario breaking up with you? I instantly closed the menu and held my composure as a wry smile pulled up at the corners of my mouth. I can assure you, Alpha, that none of it is worth listening to. Are you sure? My son seemed quite adamant about the end of you two last night. I had to hold back the frustration growing in my chest. Cesario wasn't feeling himself last night, but I promise that I will do everything in my power to make sure that your son and I are wed. And what if he were to find his mate? Then what would come of our plan? I laughed. Forgive me, Alpha, but Cesario would have to actually get out to meet people. We both know he's too consumed in his work to meet his mate. See to it that you two are still together, Johnny. That alliance with your old pack is very important to me. I waved my hand in the air nonchalantly. Please, Trenton loved me, I confessed as an image of the old pack Alpha's son popped into my head. I would even bet he still does. He'd do anything I asked of him. I winked. You are a dangerous woman, Johnny De Laurentiis. He smirked in approval. Not dangerous, just clever and driven, I replied, yielding my own smile. Chapter 7. As the days passed, Chain and I found ourselves rather bored, flipping through the channels once more. Why don't you girls go out or something? We turned to look at my mom. There isn't anything to do. How about a movie, or you two can go shopping at the mall? I sighed. We've gone to the movies like all week already, and this mall is tiny and hardly has anything worth looking at. Well then, Mom huffed as she grabbed her keys and purse. If you two aren't doing anything today, I will feel no sympathy in asking you both to go to the grocery store for me. But I began to protest, as I seriously dislike grocery stores, but Mom shot me a look that told me to remain silent. Fine, I grumbled. Good. I need the ingredients for my baked chicken ziti, and I'm sure your sister needs stuff as well, seeing as she hasn't been home all week. Are you seriously going to make ziti for Thanksgiving? I questioned her in slight disbelief. The Minixies are Italian. I'm sure they'll love it. She boasted. Okay, that's mildly stereotypical. I pointed out. It is not, Evaline. You used to love my baked ziti and you're Italian. Mom, I sighed. Just make a list and I'll go to the store. I knew there was no point in arguing over trivial things. If my mom wanted to make her dish, then that's all there is to it. She wrote down a quick shopping list and Chain, and I ran upstairs to get dressed. You know, I'm suffering from my cycle right now. Chain sounded. Excuse me? I'm on my period, she repeated, giving me a look. When I didn't respond, she sighed heavily. It's that time of the month. Oh, I laughed, then stopped. That means I will be starting soon. It sucks when it happens around the holidays. She nodded. Yeah. The holidays are rough as it is with all the nosy grown-ups in your business, then throw in the physical discomfort in front of everyone, plus poor cooking. It's like nobody knows how to make macaroni and cheese properly. Yeah, it's rough. I shook my head. I just don't understand you sometimes. She merely shrugged and plopped down onto the bed. Fine, you stay here and relax. I'll just head over to the store and hurry back, but be prepared to help me put everything away, because that's seriously the worst part about grocery shopping. I grabbed my purse and left the room. When I got outside of the house, I was suddenly hit with the realization that I have no car. With a groan of displeasure, I set forward on foot toward town. I lazily trudged along, kicking small rocks as I would pass them. Nearly 20 minutes later, I sighed as the sliding doors opened and cool air conditioning blasted my face as I pushed my cart into the grocery store. I made my way toward the produce section first and picked up a small bag of grapes and began munching as I searched for the proper aisles for my mother's requested items. I grabbed this and that and scratched them off the list, popping a grape into my mouth each time. I was just about to check out when I remembered Johnny had specifically asked me to bake some stuff for Thanksgiving dinner. I rolled my eyes, as if she could ever hope to impress Cesario's mother with her cooking skills. I shook my head. I didn't like the unkind thoughts that were filling my head toward Johnny. Perhaps it was the guilt of thinking ill of my sister, but my heart began to race. I turned into the aisle with the baking supplies and my wolf felt him before I even saw him. There, standing out like a brilliant lighthouse on a dark and stormy night, was Cesario, looking handsome as ever in another well-fitted suit. But it was the expression on his face that intrigued me. Cesario struck me as a man very sure of himself, and right now he looked lost or confused. It made me laugh a little. As soon as the sound left my mouth, his head snapped up and he looked right at me, a slow grin stretching along his face. My air supply stuck in my throat and my body didn't know how to respond. On one hand, my head was telling me to turn the cart around and check out. But on the other hand, my heart was begging me to run to him and let him take me in his arms. Neither one won out as I awkwardly just stood there, unable to move, speak, or breathe. When he took a step toward me, I took a small breath in and once more his scent carried with it, just like our first meeting. Just like last time, my wolf began to purr in satisfaction, and I too took a step forward, but it was Cesario who closed the gap between us. Of all the places I could possibly run into you, imagine my surprise at finding you right here at this very moment. Why's that? I stuttered. Because Evaline, he smiled. It seems that we were both forced to come here today, as if fate is trying to bring us together. I wanted to smile, and a huge part of me wanted to agree, but deep down inside, that little voice of reason kicked in. I dropped my eyes. I didn't want to see the hurt on his face that my words would bring. My sister asked me to come, no other reason. Evaline. I could hear the determination in his voice, but I refused to look up at him. He moved quickly, and in the next moment my head was gently being lifted up, and soon I was met with his intense gaze. Why are you trying to push me away? Because you're with Gia. Evaline, I am yours. If words could melt me, I would literally be a puddle on the floor right now. How is it possible that 4 words could make me so weak and instantly head over heels? He smiled. You don't have to say anything. I just need you to know that Evaline, you are my mate and I am yours, and nothing in this world, or anybody for that matter, can change that. I stared into his eyes. They were alight with passion and sincerity. All I could do was nod. Now his smile softened, and he took a step back. What are you doing here? To be honest, my mother made me come to pick up supplies for her dish she plans on making for Thanksgiving, and my sister asked me to cover for her by baking the desserts she promised your mother. He shook his head. You know, I was wondering how she was going to pull that one off. I haven't seen Johnny cook anything in the time I've known her. His mentioning Johnny stung, and he could sense it. I apologize. He sounded genuine. It's all right, really. I'm fine. Chapter 8. After the taxi driver helped me with the groceries, I paid him, and he went on his way. I made my way inside and found Shane coming down the stairs. You're just in time, I sighed. What's wrong? Nothing. I just don't want to be stuck putting all the groceries away by myself. I lied. She put her hands on her hips. You're lying. I can always tell when you're lying to me. It was nothing, really. I sighed restlessly. She squinted her eyes to get a really good look at me, then she stepped forward before circling me. What is that? She asked knowingly as she pointed. My hand flew up to my neck. You've got to be kidding me, I said before dropping the bags and running to the nearest bathroom. Once in front of the mirror, I examined my neck, and there it was, like a billboard, a small mark on my jaw just under my earlobe. You ran into him, didn't you? She smiled. I looked down. I hated knowing that he made me feel like this. This shouldn't have happened. I'm glad it did, Chain said seriously. Evaline, he is your mate. You need to stand up and claim what is yours, says the girl who hopes she never finds her mate. I snapped before calming down. Besides, he's with Gia. She gave a look so pointed that it felt like it could pierce right through me. I'm so tired of hearing that, Evaline, she yelled. You called me because you needed help. I'm your best friend, and I'll be ignored if I'm going to watch you play the victim. This is not the girl I've known nearly my whole life. We just stood there for a minute. Now I'm going to go put the groceries away, and you better come up with a plan to get Cesario, she said before stomping away. I put both hands on the sink and let my head hang down. She was right. When had I allowed myself to become so hesitant? What's mine is mine. I love my sister, but she should understand. Cesario and I are mates. We didn't choose this, it just happened. And if she can't take it, that is unfortunate. It would be different if he were her mate, but he isn't. It was there in that bathroom that I looked at my reflection and decided to listen to Chain and follow my heart instead of overthinking things. Come Thursday, I will be with my mate. Thursday, Thanksgiving. Please be extra careful with those, I said worriedly as Chain held the cheesecake and Johnny took the chocolate cake. You look amazing, Chain commented on my outfit. Thanks, I said quietly. Having attended an all-girls school, I wasn't used to many compliments, so it was always a bit awkward. You really do look good, baby sis, Johnny said. Oh, did you burn yourself with the curling iron? She asked as she leaned in to inspect the small mark Cesario had left on me. Yeah, I was in a rush this morning, plus I wanted to make a good impression for the Alpha and Luna. She nodded her understanding before leaving us to get into her own car. Once Mom joined us, we finally drove off to the pack house. It was a grand house that reeked of elegance. I was surprised to find that it truly was a family gathering, as no other pack members were around. Welcome, welcome, a tall man greeted us happily. I could tell he was Cesario's father. The two had the same shade of hair and carried themselves in a very similar, regal manner. I'm so glad to have your family joining us this year, and if everything goes according to plan, perhaps this won't be the only holiday we spend together. I didn't miss the smile he sent specifically to my sister. Of course, he would want his son to marry someone as strong and powerful as Johnny. Alpha, thank you for having us, Mom said as she greeted him and then moved on to his wife. Luna, your home smells amazing. I can't wait to try everything. Evaline, it's so good to see you again. The Luna spoke to Mom. She was a warm woman with effortless grace. Her smile reached her soft brown eyes. Please, won't you all come inside out of the cold? She offered sweetly. Good evening, Alpha. Johnny sounded pleasant after we had removed our jackets. Johnny, my dear, it's always a pleasure. Just then, Cesario entered the room. I noticed Chain's eyes widen for a moment before she righted herself. Alpha, this is my baby sister, Evaline, and her best friend, Chain. Chain stepped up first and shook his hand. Thank you for allowing me to join you all on such short notice, Alpha Minichi. The Alpha chuckled. Any friend of the De Laurentiis family is a friend of ours. I see you've brought us dessert as well. Actually, Evaline made it. Chain smiled. Oh yes, that reminds me. Johnny, did you bring your desserts? The Luna asked. Johnny made a troubled face. I'm sorry, I got swamped with work, so I asked my sister to make a couple of dishes. That should be fine, but I was really looking forward to seeing your skills. She smiled. You must be Evaline, the Alpha suddenly said, and in that moment, all eyes fell on me. Allow me to introduce myself and my wife. I am Giovanna, and this is my lovely wife, Florenza. It's a pleasure to meet both of you, Alpha and Luna. My dear girl, I dare say the pleasure is all mine, he said as he and his wife smiled. You're just as pretty as your sister, aren't you? I'd say she's rather stunning. I looked over at Cesario and watched him step forward. Like before, he lifted my hand and kissed my knuckles in front of everyone. I'm glad to see you again, Evaline. I have to agree with you, son. This little one is truly a beauty. His mother smiled as she walked over and put her arm around my shoulders. Won't you sit next to me, sweetheart? It would be an honor, Luna. Please, call me Florenza, she smiled. As Florenza showed us into the dining room, she assigned the seating. Darling, you go on that end, and I am on this end, she told her husband. Okay, Evaline, you will sit to my right, and your friend may sit to my left, she said almost giddily. Let's move this along, the alpha grumbled. I'm hungry. Son, you're on my right and Gia on my left. Evaline, sit between your daughters. But that won't do, Florenza stated with certainty. It should be alternating. Evaline, sit to my husband's right, and Cesario, dear, take a seat next to Evaline. The alpha simply waved his consent. Dinner was laid out on the table, and the alpha carved the turkey before everyone began passing the dishes around. Thank you, Cesario smiled as he let his hands brush against mine when I passed him the corn. I couldn't help but smile as a warm feeling filled my body. You're welcome. Once everyone was settled with a full plate, a small silence filled the dining room before the alpha spoke. Your sister tells me that you've been attending St. Magdalene's. That's a fine school. I put my fork down and gave him my full attention. Yes, sir. I've been there for some time now, and while I've missed home, I'm truly glad for the experience. So well spoken, Florenza said with admiration. Thank you. St. Magdalene's instills in us the regular curriculum as well as etiquette, so I'm merely a product of my upbringing. I smiled. Is it true that for the senior prom, they have the boys of the Incarnate Academy visit? Johnny asked. I nodded. Yes, and many of them find their mates on that night. It's funny you bring up marriage, the alpha asked. Where do you stand on couples getting married who aren't mates? I don't like it at all. Oh, he questioned. No, sir. I think it is a mistake to marry someone who isn't your mate. When the true mate comes along, it creates a very difficult situation for everyone involved, especially if there are children. I'm sorry you feel that way. Johnny glared at me. I simply shrugged. You can't possibly think Cesario will marry you. You aren't his mate. I said calmly, but my words were sharp. Shows how much you know, she smirked. He actually proposed the other night. I looked at her and then at him. He had squeezed his eyes closed before standing up. Johnny, a word, please. Something about his calm demeanor and his not outright denying it made my heart race with anxiety. Couldn't it be true, could it? I know you wanted to keep it a secret, but what better time than when our family is all together? Johnny added. His father clapped, and my mother looked incredibly proud. Shane looked shocked, and his mother seemed quite upset. Johnny, a word, please. He growled as he stood up before they both left the room. I excused myself from the table before I found my way out the back door. This can't be happening, I thought as I began to feel overwhelmed. It's not true. Chapter 9. Cesario's POV. It's funny you bring that up, marriage. Where do you stand on couples getting married who aren't mates? My dad asked. I sat back and looked at Evaline closely. I don't like it one bit, she stated, firm yet gracious. This is the most I've ever witnessed her speak, and so openly without pausing. She is seriously in her element. I just wish Mom would keep it together. I don't know how she figured it out, but she definitely knows Evaline is my mate. Oh, he asked. No, sir, I think it is a mistake to marry someone who isn't your mate, because when the true mate comes along, it creates a difficult path, she stated matter-of-factly. I nodded a bit. I couldn't agree more. How so? Dad continued to question her. Had it been anyone else, I might have grown annoyed, but as it is my father, I held my tongue, not that I had to, as my mate seemed to hold her own with ease. Well, first off, one will be heartbroken. Then there are the complications for everyone involved, and the worst is if they have a child. Imagine that situation. It can all be avoided by simply waiting for your mate. My, he sounded. To say I was proud of my mate's speech was an understatement. But the moment was short-lived when her sister spoke up. I'm sorry you feel that way. Johnny glared at her. My wolf grew defensive. If she didn't stop soon, I was going to have to stand up and demand she treat my mate with kindness and respect. But Evaline simply shrugged. You can't possibly think Cesario will marry you. You aren't his mate. I wanted to laugh so badly. I also wanted to look at my mate. Had she just accepted us? But of course, in true Johnny fashion, she had to be on top. Shows how much you know. He actually proposed the other night. I squeezed my eyes shut in an attempt to keep myself calm. If not, I would shift right here and ruin my mother's entire meal. Johnny, a word, please. I struggled to get out calmly. I know you wanted to keep it a secret, but what better time than when our family is all together? This woman is crossing the line with this lie. Does she really think I'm going to let her get away with this? To add insult to injury, my father began clapping, and her mother looked like she was just about to begin planning the wedding already. I couldn't take it anymore. Johnny, a word, please, I growled. I heard her small sound of surprise as she rose from her seat. She followed me outside, and I slammed the front door behind me. What was that? She shrugged. Oh, come on, you've got to admit that we'd be good together, Cesario. Are you serious? I asked honestly. Johnny, we're done. We've been done. I couldn't even stand still. I was filled with so much adrenaline that I began to pace. You know, even if we weren't over before, we're definitely over now. You're lucky that my father is still the leader. You would be answering for this. She didn't say a thing. You don't have anything to say for yourself? Still, she remained silent. You're going to go back in there, and first you're going to apologize to your sister for that outburst against her, and then you're going to tell everyone the truth. I'll do no such thing, she shouted. I reacted, grabbing her upper arms firmly. You will either do what I tell you to do or leave my parents' house immediately. She looked at me and turned to enter the house. I didn't bother following her. I walked along my parents' property line, taking in the crisp autumn air. I needed to clear my head. My wandering led me to the backyard, and I was thankful for it as I found Evaline there. I'm sorry about what happened in there. She got up and looked at me. I could see that tears had run down her cheeks. Hey, don't do that, I said as fresh tears began forming in her eyes. You said you were mine. My heart beat a little quicker, and I reached out and touched her face, my fingers near the mark I had left on her jaw. I am yours. She shook her head. Not from what my sister tells me. Evaline, none of that was true. She's being completely irrational. Oh, really? She asked, her voice rising a bit. Really, I answered softly. I broke up with your sister the same night I found you. There was no way I was going to lose you. She looked stunned. Say something, I begged her. You broke up with her? She asked. I nodded. So this whole time. I mean, I've been feeling guilty over my feelings for you, and this whole time you two weren't even dating. I knew she was talking more to herself than anything else, but I couldn't help but listen. What feelings? I asked confidently. Guilt, she said flatly. Why would you feel guilty? Because this whole time I've known you are my mate, and of course I can't help but want to be with you. My heart is telling me that it's okay, while my head is telling me that it's wrong. You find me attractive? I smiled. She sighed. Of course, that's all you would choose to hear. Well, there's nothing to feel guilty about. I'm single, you're single, we're mates. No issue, right? You're still my sister's ex. We'll have to be careful around her. Gia can be difficult when she wants to be, and she's not used to being told no. Still looking down at Evaline, I smiled. Does this mean you're willing to give us a chance? Once more, she sighed. I hardly have a choice, she smiled. And stop touching me, you're driving my wolf crazy. I bent down and kissed her cheek once. Stay after dinner. I can take you home. All right, she agreed happily. But we should go back in. You go in first. We have to remain inconspicuous if you want to play along with this for now, I suggested. She nodded and made her way back into the house. I waited a minute longer before re-entering. I'm sorry about all of that. I do apologize for the outbursts. And just so you all know, I did not propose to Johnny. In truth, we've been broken up for over a week already. I'm not sure where that scene came from earlier, but once again, I do apologize on her behalf. I said, noticing Johnny was nowhere to be seen. It's hardly an issue, son, my mother assured me with a loving smile. Like hell it is, my father grumbled. You have embarrassed everyone this evening. I held my composure. How so? Well, you could have at least waited until after dinner instead of making a scene. I shook my head. You'd rather I lie to you all? He remained silent. I mean, the truth would have been found out anyway. Plus, Dad, you and Mom both knew I had broken up with Johnny. I told you on the night it happened. How are we to know you didn't decide to just go back to her? He tried to place the blame on me again. I told both you and Mom I broke up with Johnny because I found my mate. Do you really think I'm going to just stop pursuing my mate to be with someone else? Silence filled the dining room. How about we try some of Evaline's beautiful desserts? Mom suggested cheerfully. Yes, please, my father grumbled. At least this should lift my mood a bit. Evaline's sweets were divine, and just as I thought I would, I loved the lemon raspberry cheesecake. It was made even better knowing I had cleared my conscience and the truth about Johnny, and I was finally out. Best of all, my mate accepted me, and now I would do anything to make her mine fully. Chapter 10. Please let me help you, I said to Florenza as she began collecting the dishes. Thank you, sweetheart, she smiled. Oh, I just love everything about the holidays, except doing the dishes. Well, if it's all right with my mom, I'd be more than willing to stay and help you clean up. Oh, Lena, honey, I promised I'd cover for one of the nurses so she could go early shopping. Mom said. I could give her a ride home. Cesario offered. I couldn't help but smile at him. That settles it then, Florenza smiled a bit knowingly. My mom came over and hugged me. Well, we're off then. Don't linger too long, I wouldn't want you to be an intrusion, she said before handing me her cell phone and walking toward the front door. I nodded, and then Chain stepped forward. I have to get going as well. We have class again come Monday, and haven't even begun reading the assigned chapters yet, she said before hugging me. I hugged her back. Call the house to let me know you made it back to school safely. She nodded, and with that, she and my mother left. I'll be upstairs. The alpha grumbled as he walked past us. I should probably go and talk to him, Florenza said before disappearing up the large staircase. Looks like we're alone. Cesario smiled. Looks like you're helping me with the dishes. I smiled in return. It grew when I saw his expression. Hey, I did offer to stay and help clean, so the faster we get it done. Well, what are we waiting for? He asked as he lifted the pile of plates I had set down. I giggled and took it upon myself to collect all the silverware. I passed Cesario on my way into the kitchen, and soon he returned by my side with his arms full of delicate wine glasses. Cesario, be careful with those, I gasped. He placed them in the sink filled with soapy water before he shrugged. I can always purchase my mother another set if I accidentally ruin one. I shook my head but began grabbing the dish brush. You know, we could always just load them in the dishwasher, he suggested. I shook my head. Nope, these all need a little more care than your average dishes, I said as I put a very beautiful china plate into the warm water. He nodded, and I couldn't help but find myself staring at him. He had removed his suit jacket and placed it on one of the tall bar chairs before rolling up his shirt sleeves and throwing his tie over his shoulder. Cesario seemed so much more calm and more relaxed than any other time I've seen him, and he was simply helping me. I turned away before he could catch me eyeing him. Once all of the dishes were cleaned, we both knew it was time for me to leave. But neither one of us wanted to bring it up. With a final sigh, he began to speak. I should probably. Yeah, I sounded. I felt more saddened by this than I should have been, and I didn't want to hear him finish the statement. He grabbed his jacket but didn't put it back on. Instead, he draped it over his forearm and pulled his keys from his pockets. I picked up my purse from the hanger by the front door and we both headed outside. What time is it? I asked. He pulled out his cell phone and checked the time. 5:20 p.m. Seems dinner was cut a lot shorter than I thought, he said before grinning. Do you want to go home? I knew I should just go home, but with the air cleared between us, I found it impossible to even think about being away from him, so I shook my head no. Good, there's somewhere I want to take you. he said, placing his hand on my lower back and leading me to a shiny black car. He opened the passenger door for me, and I got in. After he closed my door and raced over to his side, we took off. We drove in a comfortable silence through town. The whole while, I silently wished he would just reach over and take my hand. Suddenly, we pulled up to a tall building, and my heart began to race. This was either a hotel or luxury apartments. We went through the parking garage until we were quite high up. "Do you live here?" I asked. "I do," he smiled. "Is this what you wanted to show me, your apartment?" Now he chuckled. "No, but I can if you'd like." "Maybe next time," I said without thinking. As the words left my mouth, I realized I had basically given him an open invitation for another occasion. That familiar grin slowly spread across his face. "I'll keep that in mind. Actually, I came to swap cars. Of course, all of these are yours." I shook my head. "Hey, there are only 3 of them." He smirked. "The Mercedes is for work, the BMW was the first car I ever purchased, and then there's this." His smile was on full display as he approached a vehicle under a cloth cover. "This is my pride and joy." He carefully removed the cover and revealed a classic car. "What is it?" I asked as I gently ran my hand across the side of the vintage cream-colored convertible. He gave a soft smile. "It's a 1957 Chevy. It was my grandy's. When he passed, he left it to me, stating I was the one who visited him and my grandma most often." "That's so sweet, Cesario," I said. "They were my grandparents," he shrugged. "Of course I visited them." I simply nodded. "Enough about me for now," he stated. "We should get going if we want to make it on time." Chapter 11. Once more, Cesario held the door open for me, and I gladly took the passenger seat. Before buckling up, I leaned over and pulled up the vintage lock on his door. He smiled at me. He could have very easily done it himself, but the small gesture seemed to impress him. He started up the car and listened to the engine admiringly before driving away from the parking space. This time, as we rode down the street, an old song played smoothly, so there wasn't a heavy silence, and this time he did take my hand. I couldn't keep the smile from my face. "I bet this car is something else when you can actually put the top down," I acknowledged. "Yeah," he sighed. "It's way too cold tonight to put it down, but I promise to give you a ride when the weather gets a little nicer." This time I replied, "I'll keep that in mind." We reached our destination just as the sun was going down. He parked the car near the edge of a fenced-off cliff and then turned off the engine. "Did you seriously bring me to a makeout spot?" I chuckled a little. "No, what am I, some teenager?" He rolled his eyes playfully. I laughed and nudged his arm. The action only made him laugh. "I brought you here for the view and to get to know you better." "Well, I hate to tell you this, but the sunset is sort of behind us." Once more, he laughed lightly. "Perhaps I wanted to show you something other than the sunset." How cliché would that be anyway? "Now, tell me about yourself." I shrugged. "What's there to tell that you haven't already heard from my mom or sister?" He touched my face sweetly. "Tell me something no one knows." "When I'm away at school, I don't miss my family at all." "Why?" he asked. "It's hard to miss what you hardly had in the first place," I told him. "You see, after my mom faced her losses, she fell into a slump. When my dad passed, it became a full-blown struggle. Johnny and I pretty much grew up without much guidance. Johnny had to do a lot to put both of us through school, just working multiple jobs to make it happen. He clung to my every word, so I continued. When she sent me away to St. Magdalene's, I wanted to be upset with her for making me leave, but I was actually thankful. I basically grew up in that school alongside Shane. She's more of a sister to me than Johnny is. Sure, I talk to Johnny every week, but what kind of relationship is that? I'm sorry. He sounded sincere. She never even came to visit me, not once. This is my first time I've been home in 10 years, and I was frustrated to find out that she and my mom were so happy going about their lives like I didn't even exist. He reached up once more, only this time, when he cupped my face, he let his thumb run over my cheeks, catching the moisture there. I'm sorry, I apologized as I sat back a little and quickly dried my face. I hadn't meant to get so emotional, I said, feeling more than a little embarrassed. You have nothing to apologize for, Evaline. I smiled up at him. Thanks. All right, he said, much more energetic. The sun's almost fully down. Look over there. He pointed. Had I been human, I wouldn't have been able to see it, but with my enhanced eyesight, I could make out the city skyline. Almost as soon as the last of the sun's rays touched the town, the city lit up with what seemed to be millions of lights twinkling in the distance. It's beautiful, I said. I've never been to the city, much less seen it at night like this. Really? Really. As I said, I grew up in the school. The only thing we ever really did other than school was explore the town. What town? He asked. Sparrow Grove. You're kidding me, he smiled, sounding excited. My uncle is the alpha of the Sparrow Grove pack. No way. I've met a couple of people in town who are in that pack. He nodded. That's where my grandmother was from, and that's also where my grandparents retired to. It's so crazy how close we've always been to one another, but have only met just recently, I stated. Perhaps it was you who drew me to visit so often. The mood was shifting once more. We found ourselves alone in the comfortable quiet, out in the middle of nowhere. The only sounds that could be heard were our heartbeats mixed with the nightlife of the forest. Suddenly, my mother's phone vibrated so loudly that it pulled both of us out of the moment. Sorry, I said, startled by the interruption. It's probably just my sister or something. I realized that my mother texted me from my sister's phone. I had assumed that after today's events, Johnny would have made her way back to her apartment in the city. It's my mom, I have to get home, I admitted. He nodded and then started the car back up. As the car reversed away from the edge of the cliff, I texted back. There were more dishes than I originally thought, but I'm headed home now. Could I walk you to the door? He asked as he pulled up to the house. Better not, I grimaced. Johnny's car is still here. I don't want to make things more dramatic than they've already been today. Can I see you tomorrow? He asked a little nervously. I couldn't contain the giggle that escaped me before nodding yes. I hopped out of the car, and when I reached the front door, I gave him a final wave goodbye before entering the house. Neither my mother nor my sister was in sight, so I went into the kitchen and left Mom's phone on the counter. I picked up the cordless phone, went straight up to the room, and called Shane. Tell me you two at least kissed, she answered. I rolled my eyes and lay back against my bed. No, and why didn't you call me when you got back? Didn't want to interrupt anything. There was only talking, I confessed. Lame, she sighed. Well, I was being serious about the reading, so I'm going to have to let you go for now. Call me tomorrow. Will do. Good night, Shane. Night, Lena. Chapter 12. After a while of just lying in the room, I walked back downstairs to see what I could find to snack on, as we didn't exactly get to finish dinner. But as soon as I stepped on the stairs, I was greeted with utter chaos. Both my mother and my sister were on the phone, walking about aimlessly as they talked quickly. What's going on? I asked, but my words reached no one. I won't be able to come in tonight, my mother sighed into her phone. I know what we had planned, but it will have to wait. My girls need me right now. Well, you knew that before all of this started, she shouted before hanging up. Everything all right, Mom? She looked at me and sighed. I'm gonna call it a night, sweetie. You should do the same. I'm afraid you're going to have to go back to school tomorrow. Why? She cut me off. I'm swamped with work, and your sister is more than likely going back to New York, so no one will be here to look after you. I'm not a child, I stated. Sweetie, I would feel better knowing you are back at school. She silenced me. Well, can't I come back on weekends now? I asked. I miss you, Mom. She sighed before coming over to embrace me awkwardly. We miss you too, Evaline, but the timing is difficult. I promise we will see each other for Christmas break next month. She smiled as if it were the best news I could ever hear. Yeah. She went upstairs and left me standing there. I slumped onto the sofa and let my arm drape over my eyes. I must have been hidden, or perhaps Johnny was too involved in her conversation to notice me. Either way, she sauntered into the living room, still on the phone. I held still as she spoke agitatedly. I don't give a care. I swear I will do anything to keep you from being allied with them. My eyebrows pulled together. Was she talking about Cesario and the pack? Surely she couldn't be that upset. You know I've always respected you, Trenton, so I can't exactly tell you what to do. But if you want my advice, no matter what, don't sign the treaty. She said much more softly. A slow smile built its way up her cheeks, and that's when she spotted me. I'm gonna have to let you go. I'll talk to you later. She hung up. I didn't know you were in here. I remained silent. Look, about today, I should have told you and Mom that Cesario and I were over, she said, using a kind voice. I shouldn't have put you in the crossfire. I mean, I was humiliated, but you were completely blindsided, and I apologize for that. Johnny, it's okay, really. No, she shook her head defiantly. Cesario needs to be brought down a notch, and I will make sure I'm the one to do it. No one makes a fool out of my family or me. She growled. And just wait until I find out who his mate is. I swear I will make her life miserable. At that, I couldn't help but stand up. Johnny, I sounded, finally getting her full attention. I have never asked you for anything, but right now I ask you to please let this go. Do not act on this. You will regret it. I know I hardly know Cesario, but I have a feeling that he isn't one to be made a fool of. And I couldn't even imagine what he would do if he ever found out that Johnny threatened his mate, that my own sister unknowingly threatened me. She smiled sweetly. I know you're worried, little Lena, but I can assure you that he will not see it coming. I shook my head. I'm glad I'm leaving. I can't stand to know what a person my sister has become. I said in utter disgust. You're willing to put people in harm's way all because a guy broke up with you? Move on. Quit wasting your time plotting and go look for your own mate. Perhaps you wouldn't be so bitter. My words were like a slap to the face, and I turned without waiting for a reaction. I went straight to the room and packed everything I had brought with me. Once I was ready, I collected my bags and left the house. I didn't need to be in a place where I felt like a burden, and I certainly didn't want to be around when the truth came out about Cesario and me. I got to the train station and felt my heart grow heavy. I was running away back to school without so much as a goodbye to Cesario. As I began to look around, I realized that I didn't know how to get back to his apartment, and I didn't have his phone number. I knew he would find out, but I felt even worse because he had asked to see me this weekend. Before I could think about seeking him out, the train pulled into the station. All aboard, the conductor shouted. I was the only person on the platform. I knew I had to get going. I stepped forward, and he kindly took my bags. This way, miss. He led me to a private corridor. When the train finally pulled away from the station, I had the strong urge to cry. What I wouldn't give to see Cesario one more time before Christmas. Chapter 13. Cesario's POV. I woke up in the greatest mood ever. As I got ready to go to a board meeting with the construction crew for my next project, I couldn't help but feel like I was in a romantic music video. I went for a more relaxed and casual look as I planned on meeting up with Evaline after the meeting. I pulled out my cell phone to text her good morning, but as I opened my contacts, I suddenly realized that I didn't actually get her number last night. I frowned a bit, but placed my phone back in my pocket, making a mental note to get her phone number the first chance I got. I decided to skip breakfast and head straight over to the meeting. I knew once I arrived, it would start, and the sooner it ended, the sooner I would be free to spend some quality time with my mate. As I walked into my company's boardroom, I found my assistant setting up the displays showing the various charts and sketches my team had prepared. Good morning, Mr. Minichi. Franny, my receptionist, greeted me. Can I do anything for you, sir? I ignored her overly warm tone. Bring me a coffee and have my messages placed on my desk. Lastly, inform everyone that the meeting is starting in 3 minutes. I will not accept tardiness. Yes, sir, she said before dashing away. I took my seat at the head of the large table and watched in silence as my team filled the conference room. The meeting began. My architects, developers, and suppliers were all present. This project is too important to have anything out of place, I stated before my lead architect stood and began his presentation. 2 hours later, the meeting was called to a close, and I felt confident in the project's direction. I went into my office and collected my messages and my laptop. With Evaline here, I knew I wouldn't be coming into the office nearly as much as usual. I locked up and then stopped by Franny's desk. I will be out all weekend. Do not call me unless it is an absolute emergency. Everything else can wait until Monday. I placed my bag in the back seat and got in the car. As I prepared to take off, I realized that if I just showed up at the De Laurentiis house, I could possibly run into Johnny. It would be awkward for Evaline, plus I didn't exactly have a specific reason to go over. I ended up just driving to my parents' house. Hello, son. My mother smiled. She pulled me into a tight hug and led me into the kitchen. Let me get you something to eat. I took a seat on one of the bar stools and waited. Here, have a turkey sandwich, she said as she handed me a plate. I had so much food left over from yesterday. I'm sorry if the evening didn't go as planned, I said. She hushed me with a wave of her hand. It was lovely finally meeting Evaline, especially after hearing so much about her. I couldn't help but smile. Mom, we both know that you figured out that Evaline's my mate. She turned and had a sly smile on her face. I never said otherwise. I like her, she stated. She speaks her mind and doesn't hold back. I knew she was referring to the conversation over dinner with my father. Most people would merely tell him what they think he wants to hear, but not Evaline. Speaking of Evaline, my mother continued. Her desserts were delicious, and unfortunately, she left her platters here. She smiled knowingly. Cesario, would you be a dear and run them over to the De Laurentiis house? I wouldn't want them to forget their dishes. I knew what my mother was doing. Ever the romantic, my mother was doing everything she could to get Evaline and me to spend time together. Yes, I should do that right now, actually, I said as I got up. She nodded. Perhaps she would like a formal tour of the town. I picked up the glass platters and headed toward my car. I made my way over to her mother's house and was filled with relief when I didn't see Johnny's car there. I grabbed the platters and knocked on the front door. It took a moment, but Mrs. De Laurentiis finally opened the door. Oh, Cesario, to what do I owe the pleasure? I'm sorry to come unannounced. Evaline forgot to bring these back yesterday, I said, holding up the glass platters. Of course, she smiled. Would you mind setting them in the dining room? I've just painted my nails. I entered the house and placed them on the table. I turned to find her still standing at the door. Is Evaline home? I asked. I want to personally thank her for helping my mother last night. I figured I could give her a tour of the town. How kind of you, Cesario, and I'm sure Evaline would have gladly accepted. She smiled weakly, but she has gone back to school. No worries, she will be back for the Christmas break. I stood there unsure. I knew her explanation was a way of telling me it was time for me to go. I simply nodded. Have a good day, Mrs. De Laurentiis. I got into my car and knew what I had to do. I pulled out my cell phone. Hey, Lucas. Nephew, it's been too long. My uncle stated happily. What are you calling me for? I chuckled. My uncle Lucas is only a few years older than me, and we grew up more like brothers. I'm coming to visit. I need your help with something. Oh, would this have anything to do with the girl? Once more, I laughed. You don't know how right you are. Chapter 14. Cesario's POV. I went back to my apartment and packed a suitcase. I knew I would be on my uncle's lands all weekend. It had been a while since I took a weekend off, let alone a 3-day weekend like this. I knew better than to inform my parents. While my mother wouldn't mind, especially if she knew it had anything to do with Evaline, my father hadn't talked to his brother in years. My father is the traditional, strict leader type, but my uncle Lucas is the complete opposite. He prides himself on being the most relaxed leader around. Lucas and I grew up together, which made us extremely close. When he had to take on the position of leader for the Sparrow Grove pack, it was a change, but we saw the fun in it. Mainly, it meant time away from my father's demanding eyes. For all his faults, Lucas is actually a very caring leader. With my suitcase and laptop bag in tow, I put them both into my car and took off immediately to the next town over. I couldn't keep the smile off my face as I passed the Grand St. Magdalene's Academy. Knowing my mate was somewhere within the confines of the school made me feel lighthearted. I sped on and made my way to my uncle's pack house. I slowed down as I reached the block, then finally turned onto the long driveway. As I pulled up, my uncle stood on the front steps awaiting my arrival. He was dressed casually in jeans, a t-shirt, and a leather jacket. "Nephew." We exchanged brotherly hugs. He ran a hand through his hair, which was longer than I remembered, accentuating his facial hair. "Lucas, I hardly recognize you," I stated. He chuckled. "Hey, it's a good look," he assured me before he threw his arm over my shoulders and led me inside. "Tell me what's going on with you, Cesario." Together we entered the house and walked into his office. He took his seat behind a large desk, and I sat in front of him. I found my mate. He looked down and shook his head with a dry smile. "What?" I asked. "Are you still thinking you'll never find yours? That one person couldn't come into your life and change everything. Look, I have nothing against the bond, and I think you finding yours is great." He smirked. "But you know me, I didn't sign up for all of that. I don't think I'm built for just one person. You'll need a partner one day," I pointed out. He shrugged. "Perhaps I'll simply find someone who doesn't mind my lifestyle." I shook my head. He simply laughed. "Come now, Cesario, tell me about the lucky lady who captured your heart." I couldn't keep the grin from growing on my face. "Her name is Evaline De Laurentiis, and she is perfection." I gushed. "She's as lovely as she is clever. She is quite vocal on things she is passionate about and isn't afraid to voice her opinions, no matter who she might upset. I think I could learn to like this girl." Lucas laughed. "She's also sweet and caring, and she is incredible in the kitchen." I filled him in. "More importantly, I feel so calm around her, and I want to spend every minute of my day with her." "Then why aren't you with her right now?" I looked up at him. "She's here." "One of my pack members?" he questioned. I shook my head. "She's a student at St. Magdalene's, and I need your help. I know the girls are allowed to leave school on the weekends, but they have to go back at the end of the day, unless someone requests permission for them to stay off grounds until Monday. Seems like something only a parent can do," he pointed out. "Or the leader of these lands." I smiled. Chapter 15. Chain's POV. I was pulled awake by the suddenness of the bright lamp's illumination from Evaline's side of the room. I sat up and immediately squinted my eyes momentarily before I found that it was, in fact, my best friend unpacking her luggage. "Hey doll, what are you doing here?" I yawned, then got up to help her. It was only Thursday, and she still had the rest of the holiday to get to know her mate before she had to come back. She looked up at me with wet eyes. "Johnny is going to do something, and there is nothing I can do to stop it," she cried. I sighed and pulled my friend into my arms. I felt for her, knowing how much she had been through. During my stay with them, I could tell her mother and sister were very focused on social status and power. To be honest, I couldn't actually believe Evaline was related to them, as she is nothing like them. "Oh, Lena, I wish I could help you, but I'm sure Cesario will do everything to keep you safe." Cesario, the handsome guy who fell for Evaline, I couldn't help but smile. While the idea of a permanent bond isn't my thing, my friend deserves someone like him, someone who would love and respect her always. Why don't we forget about this and get some sleep? In the morning, we can go out and grab a coffee like usual, I offered. Seeing as it was the holiday break, we would be able to roam the town. Yeah, she smiled. I pushed her luggage to the wall, and she climbed into bed. I turned off her lamp and then got back into my own bed. "I think I want to try one of your holiday drinks," I said to the barista. He was obviously younger than us, and I could tell I was making him nervous. "Well, we have a peppermint drink, or the iced gingerbread is supposed to be good." Evaline made a face, and I had to agree. "2 peppermint drinks, please," Evaline ordered for us. The guy let out a small breath of relief before collecting her money. "You know, since I had that argument with Johnny, I wouldn't be surprised if she stopped sending me money," she said, growing sad. "What if she stops paying my tuition as well?" "Then I'll pay for your school," I said, as if it was obvious. "I have a trust fund that I can easily dip into, or I could just tell my granddie what's going on, and he will gladly help. You know, he practically considers you a granddaughter." I couldn't help but smirk as I recalled all the conversations I had with my grandfather about her. Now every time I call him, he asks about his girls. She smiled. "He's never even met me." "No, but he does know that you're the reason I've stayed focused." He also knows you're my best friend. Plus, if you had to leave, then of course I would threaten to leave. So trust me when I say that you will stay at school one way or another. The guy called our names, and we took our drinks to go. As we strolled along the cobblestone streets looking at all of the high-end shops, I couldn't help but think about her worries. What if her sister really did stop paying for her school? This is something I was having a hard time imagining. I am an only child, and my family is quite well off. My best friend knows that my mother passed away when I was born and left me a sizable trust fund. But she doesn't know the full extent of my family's influence. It's not like I intended on keeping it a secret, it's just something I tend to share once I know I can trust someone completely. Evaline and I have been friends for so long that even though I trust her, it just never came up. To bring it up now would be weird, and I would hate for her to feel like I purposely kept something from her. "Oh, isn't that pretty?" Evaline asked, pulling me from my thoughts. I smiled. "Oh yeah, you'd look great in that," I said, taking a mental note to look for the dress in her size later as a Christmas gift. Evaline Chain. We turned to see one of the ladies from the front office approaching us. "Yes," I asked. I knew we were within our rights to be out of the school today. "You two have received letters. If you would both follow me back to the office, the headmistress will give them to you." We looked at each other before following her. Usually, mail was given during the call-out every morning. Once we made it back to school, both of us were escorted into the office. She sat behind her desk and smiled at us. In all my years, I haven't seen any student get personal letters from the Minichi family, she stated as she held out our letters. Evaline sat up a little straighter. I took the letters before we went back up to our dorm room. But as we reached our room, I looked much more closely at the name written on the front. Lucas Minichi. I immediately opened my letter in awe. "Ms. Chain Adams, your presence has been requested for dinner at the Sparrow Grove Pack House promptly at 7 p.m. This is a formal event. Arrangements have been made for a car to pick you up at 6:30. I look forward to meeting you. Alpha L. Minichi." A dinner invitation? From Lucas Minichi? Did you get an invite as well? Evaline asked. Yeah, I nodded, a bit frazzled. I tried to paste on a smile, but inside I was worried. Before coming to school here, my father had made one thing very clear: stay away from Lucas Minichi. I wonder why the leader invited us so suddenly, especially since we've been here for so many years now. Evaline knew exactly where I was coming from. "It says dinner is at 7 p.m., she pointed out. Cesario said his uncle runs the pack. Maybe he told his uncle about me. That much is evident, I said, and looked at my alarm clock. The time now reads 4:37. Perhaps we should start getting ready. I sighed and placed the letter on my bedside table. I knew if my father found out, he would be upset, but on the other hand, this was a personal invitation. To decline would be seen as a form of disrespect. A couple of hours later, Evaline and I were dressed and ready. Knowing this was a dinner with a leader, I went with a navy blue gown, and Evaline had chosen a gorgeous emerald-colored dress with a black lace overlay. Soon after, we made our way outside and a luxurious black car was waiting for us. I was on edge. I was just happy that Evaline and I had each other for support. The car drove us up a long driveway, and a familiar face stood on the porch waiting to greet us. Good evening, ladies. Don't you two look lovely? Cesario sounded. I'm surely glad to see you, I said honestly. He chuckled. Well, I'm glad you both could make it. Evaline greeted him a bit awkwardly. These two were so well matched. He showed us into the grand house. As I stepped in, I gathered the bottom of my dress a bit so I wouldn't trip. But as the sound of another person entering the room reached my ears, I also felt something deep inside of me wake up. I looked up and came face to face with a striking man. You have got to be kidding me, I muttered. This couldn't be happening. Mate, my wolf called from deep inside. I knew no one could hear her, but at that moment, he locked eyes with me. He stared at me for the longest time before a slow smirk lifted one of his cheeks. Cesario and Evaline had already moved further into the house, leaving the two of us alone in the foyer. I'm Lucas Minichi, leader of the Sparrow Grove Pack. He stated with utter confidence, as if he expected me to be impressed. I simply lifted an eyebrow to let him know where I stood. And I don't have time for this, I replied. Let's just get this dinner over with and pretend like this never happened. He chuckled. Feisty and independent. Not exactly what I'm used to. Don't get used to it, I sneered. I don't want a mate, and even if I did, I wouldn't want someone with your reputation. You wound me, he feigned sadness. Oh, please, everyone knows your reputation. Once again, his smirk returned. So you have heard of me? I've heard to stay clear of you, I said before I walked away toward the room where Evaline and Cesario had gone. Of all the luck. I never wanted a mate, especially not one who seemed so intent on being in my life. Chapter 16. There you are, I smiled as I watched Shane gracefully saunter into the room. I was just about to go and find you. As I spoke, I couldn't help but take note of her posture. Her head was held high, and her shoulders were back, her pretty face appearing stony, but her eyes were lost in thought. Something was definitely going on with her. Everything all right? My words seemed to shake her from whatever she was thinking about, and she offered me a soft smile as she came over and linked her arm with mine. I'm fine now. Where's Cesario? I rolled my eyes at her nickname for him. He went to inform the staff that dinner is about to start. Then we should probably make our way to the dining room. She acknowledged. If you would do me the honor, Ms. Adams, a deep voice sounded from behind us. We turned to find Cesario's uncle smiling right at us. Or rather, right at Shane. She looked at him with clear annoyance. Evaline and I are perfectly capable of seeing ourselves into the dining room. To that I have no doubts, but what kind of host would I be if I allowed such lovely women to be unescorted? Shane seemed to huff indignantly. As an outsider looking in, I could clearly see that these two were quite similar in their strong personalities. The food should be getting to the table in less than 5 minutes, Cesario announced as he came over to my side. Shall we head to the dining room? I took his hand and looked at Shane. She sighed before giving me a small smile and nodding her consent for me to go with Cesario. As Cesario led me out of the room, I couldn't help but hear Lucas's bold words to her. But if I knew my friend well enough, I knew she wouldn't take his arm. As Cesario held my chair out for me, I found that I was right. Shane walked into the room on her own. Ever the gentleman, Cesario went and helped her into her chair as he had done with me. She kindly offered him a soft smile of thanks before her expression turned into one of obvious frustration as Lucas took his seat at the head of the table. I noticed the way he looked at her. Something about her reaction seemed to interest him, and he even went so far as to wink at her. Shane merely looked away and struck up a conversation with Cesario. So, Evaline, Cesario tells me you two are mates. Lucas sounded casual as the wine was served. I turned in my seat slightly to give him my full attention. That's right. I smiled. And how do you think his parents will react when they find out? I'm not quite sure. While his parents are lovely people, I have a feeling that his father will be less enthusiastic than his mother. He chuckled a little. That sounds about right. Nothing against you personally, Evaline. It's just that my older brother is very focused on influence and status. Sounds like my older sister. Once more, he laughed. Seems you and I have more in common than one would initially think. He took a sip of his wine, and I did the same. They should never underestimate the younger siblings, he said much more seriously now. We may be younger, but that only means we are more driven. I couldn't believe that I found myself agreeing with him. In this moment, he didn't seem like the same person who was teasing Shane merely minutes ago. When the food came out, the conversations died down momentarily as everyone enjoyed the meal. Adams. Shane Adams, such a common last name. Lucas sounded suddenly. Tell me, Ms. Adams, what pack do you hail from? Shane looked like she didn't want to be put on the spot. When she noticed Cesario and me looking at her, she blushed. A rare sight for my normally confident friend. Oh, it's not too far from here. She answered half-heartedly, never once looking up from her plate. Really? Lucas pressed, then went silent. He seemed to be thinking hard about something, then his expression shifted. New Jersey? Shane sighed before nodding. Short Hills. You wouldn't happen to be related to Alpha Garland Adams, would you? At that, Shane snapped her head up and glared at him. She looked like she wanted to tell Lucas off for prying, but she held her tongue for a moment. You want to do this? Fine, she said, placing her napkin down. I knew dinner was over. Yes. My name is Chain Richmond Adams. I am the only child of Alpha Garland and Whitney Adams, she stated before looking over at me in an apologetic way. I gave her a small smile, not entirely sure what she had to feel bad about. Now what about you, Alpha Minichi? Is it true that you have quite the reputation for being a playboy? She asked. She didn't stop there. Your poor mate, she added. I couldn't possibly imagine being with a man who so willingly gives himself to women whose names he doesn't even bother remembering. This time it was Lucas's turn to respond. He wiped the corners of his mouth with his napkin before calmly placing it down. He slowly stood up. I do not pretend to be anything other than who I am, he stated, speaking directly to Chain. As for my mate, I know she will be my equal in every way. I don't expect her to like the life I've lived before her, but I would hope that as my mate, she could learn to accept me as I am and know that I am willing to grow with her. The two stared at each other for a moment, and it felt increasingly awkward. I looked over at Cesario, and he appeared confused himself. We should probably get going, I voiced, feeling unsure, before standing up. Cesario walked Chain and me to the front door. Lucas had disappeared into a room by the foyer and closed the door behind him. I'm sorry that the evening didn't go as planned, Cesario sighed. Lucas is usually a lot more relaxed, and Chain, I'm sorry if he caused you any offense. She shook her head. I think we both acted out unreasonably, more so me. She sounded unwell all of a sudden. Cesario helped her into the car, leaving us alone once more. I wanted tonight to go so much better than it did, he sighed. I reached up and touched his cheek. We can't let what happened tonight affect us. I smiled. Can I see you tomorrow? At this, he smiled. I'll be here until Sunday. Then he pulled out his phone. What's your number? I quickly gave him the number to Chain, and I share, and then got into the car. As we drove away, I watched Cesario wave goodbye. Chapter 17. Cesario's POV. As I watched the car finally drive out of sight, I quickly made my way back inside and went straight into Lucas's office. What happened? I found him leaning against the window, looking out, with an amber-colored liquid in his glass. Are you just going to pretend like tonight didn't happen? He threw back the remaining contents of his glass and turned to refill it. Chain. Yeah, you were quite difficult with her. He looked right at me. He looked like he wanted to say something, but shook his head, his frustration clearly growing. Leave, Cesario. I'm not leaving until you tell me what's going on. I said get out of here. He growled. I stood my ground, not moving once. It was clear that something about tonight, Chain in particular, had upset him. I'll be at my house if you need me, I said before, calmly turning to leave. I went upstairs and retrieved my belongings. Lucas didn't bother to stop me from leaving, and I'm not sure I would have stayed even if he had tried. I got into my car and drove away with a sigh. I couldn't imagine what could have happened tonight that would have set him off like that. Once in the familiar home that was once my grandparents', I took off my suit jacket and loosened my tie. I let my body fall into the long sofa and put my feet up on the armrest as I used to when I was a kid. But instead of the familiar sounds of my grandma in the kitchen or my grandy humming along to his favorite jazz bands, I was greeted with silence. I couldn't handle the quiet, so I went up to the bedroom. While I kept most of the house in its original state, I had modified it only a bit, especially in the master bedroom. I went over to the tall armoire and pulled out a blanket for the bed before sitting down and kicking off my shoes. After that, I decided I would wash off tonight's events with a quick shower. Once out, I dried my hair and didn't even bother combing it back. I got into bed and checked my phone. No calls or texts. I put my phone on the pillow next to me and instantly imagined Evaline here with me. With a smile, I picked my phone back up and texted her. Cesario, hey. After pressing send, I realized that I hadn't given her my telephone number, and she probably didn't know who was texting her. I didn't want her to think it was the wrong number, so I texted her once more. Cesario, this is Cesario. I felt foolish. I began overanalyzing how Evaline would react to receiving these messages. Surely she would laugh. Evaline, hi. It was one word, but I couldn't help the smile that grew on my face. Then it fell. I would have to text a response, but she didn't exactly offer any opener other than a greeting. With a sigh, I typed in the first thing that came to mind. Cesario. I truly am sorry about tonight. It didn't take long for her to reply. Evaline, it's no problem, really. Try not to worry about it too much. Now I smirked. This was my opener. Cesario, well, you should let me make it up to you. It's the least I can do. This time it did take a little longer. Evaline, you don't have to. At that, I didn't waste a minute. Cesario, I want to. Evaline, okay then. Since we planned on hanging out tomorrow anyway, tomorrow night. Cesario. Tomorrow night. We'll keep it simple. Dinner and a movie. Evaline, sounds like a plan. Cesario, good. Can't wait. I smiled. I liked that she seemed to be able to comfortably text me, and I wanted to push things a little further. Cesario, not to sound needy, but I miss you already. Evaline, I miss you too. My wolf was as excited as I was. Cesario, would it be too forward to admit that I wish you were here with me right now? Evaline, really? Cesario, yeah. This bed is too big for just me. Could use a beautiful girl lying next to me right about now. Evaline, perhaps you should go out and find one then. I let a laugh escape me. My mate was being playful. Cesario, no need to go looking when I've already found perfection. Evaline, do you know how much of a charmer you are? Cesario, only for you, Evaline. Now try and get some sleep. I knew I had to let her go if I planned on seeing her tomorrow. I didn't want her to be too tired. Evaline, good night, Cesario. I could practically hear her voice saying my name. Cesario, sweet dreams. Chapter 18. Everything all right with him? Chain asked as I stashed our phone back into the old sneaker. Yeah, we're seeing each other tomorrow, I admitted a little giddily, but my happiness was pushed aside as I recalled tonight's events. So, do you want to talk about what happened back there? Not particularly. Chain, I know something's up. I pressed. Just drop it, Evaline. She nearly shouted. After a couple of seconds, she calmed her voice. The fact of the matter is that Lucas Minichi is a person who doesn't worry about consequences, only current gratification. The words sounded strange coming from her, the girl who usually flirts with everyone. But you've always preferred non-mates. Shouldn't he at least be of interest to you? I bravely asked. At this, she jumped up from her bed. The only thing interesting about him is his reputation, and it's not a good one. I hate to do this to you, I nearly whispered. But for the sake of Cesario and me, could you try and be civil when you're around him? Lena, she sighed. I don't have to be around him ever. What happened tonight never has to repeat itself. I nodded, and the subject was dropped. I got into my pajamas and settled into bed. Silence fell upon the room. Hey Chain, can I ask you something? Sure, she responded. Is it your first time? Silence surrounded us momentarily. That's a personal question, Evaline, Chain responded. But no, it wasn't. Why? What does it feel like? It can be uncomfortable at first, she confessed. Mostly due to nerves. But popping your cherry isn't just about the physical, Lena. It's emotional, too. I mulled her words over. I fully expected to be with Cesario someday, but I wasn't exactly planning it out yet. It also depends on your partner. If he's attentive to your pleasure and careful because you're new to it, then it can actually be good. Plus, considering you'd be with your mate, I'm sure the bond helps get you through the more difficult parts. You learn what you like as you go. I was glad the lights were out. Her words had caused me to blush. I couldn't imagine being so brave yet. I don't think you have to worry about Cesario, she said. He's your mate. I hear that connection makes it special, downright magical. There was a slight sadness to her voice. Do you ever wonder what it would be like to actually find and be with your mate? I wondered out loud. I had always known the anti-mate Chain, mostly because of her father's grief. She never wanted to feel that pain. Only recently has the thought run across my mind, she confessed. For a second, I thought about what it would be like. I thought about what kind of mate Chain would have. He would have to be calm and not one who challenges her too much, as she is very competitive. He would have to be strong enough to protect her, but also loving and kind. I can't wait until you find him. It is going to be so exciting, I said dreamily. I'm sure it will be very unremarkable, she threw in. I chuckled. Doubtful. I think you'd have a hard time keeping your hands off him. She made a sound of protest. I can assure you there was no attraction. What? In my thoughts about meeting my mate, there was no tension. There was actually a lot of questioning and sadness. I shook my head. Of course, someone who doesn't want a mate would think meeting them would be sad. Well, I hope if you ever do find him, you can at least give him a chance. Good night, Evaline. She sighed. I knew better than to egg her on further. Good night, Chain. Chapter 20. The next morning, Chain and I went to our favorite coffee shop. We sat and drank our beverages and ate delicious scones. I should call and check on Mom and everyone back home, I said. I mean, I left in a difficult way, I added. Of course. Chain obviously wasn't listening to me. Chain. It finally got her attention. Everything okay? Oh yeah, Lena. Just thinking about a lot of stuff, like my dad. I'm sorry I didn't mention who my father was before. I brushed her words off. You know I don't care about that. But if he's on your mind, you should call him. I've really disappointed him over the years, Lena. Back then, I went against the rules, and I wasn't exactly discreet, and he hated it. She spoke more to herself than to me. I can't disappoint him again. If he found out, I don't even know what he'd do. She was on the verge of tears. Hey, you haven't done anything wrong lately, I assured her. She gave me a small smirk and shook her head. Sorry, I must be emotional because of my cycle. I'm usually not like this. I smiled at my friend. You should call your father anyway. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Yeah, she said, retrieving the cell phone. I'll be right back. Chain's POV. I excused myself and followed Evaline's advice. I quickly dialed the number. Office of Garland Adams. I recognized the voice and couldn't help but smirk. Little Romany Piles. Chain Adams, he chuckled. Then he dropped his voice to a whisper. I wasn't so little last time we saw each other. His words brought up the memory of a night I spent with my father's assistant. I had been upset about a family matter at the time, and my father never found out. Aren't you bold, bringing that up in my father's office? I said. He's in a meeting, so he isn't paying attention. Hold on, I'll ring you through. I waited. Chain. My voice stuck in my throat. Hey, Papa. Is everything all right, my girl? His sweet words struck me. I missed my father and my grandfather. I couldn't tell him the truth yet, not about meeting Lucas. I didn't want to burden him with that news. I just missed you, Papa. Well, I always miss you, Chain. I'm busy at the moment, but perhaps you can come home soon for my birthday. Of course. Can I bring my best friend? No doubt, he chuckled. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up. I turned to re-enter the coffee shop and caught someone's eye. Chain. Cesario, I smiled. How lucky to run into you. He gave me a kind hug and a kiss on the cheek. I was hoping to run into Evaline. You risk taker, I teased. She's just in there. He smiled and went inside. I knew the two would be making plans, so I decided to make myself scarce. I don't wish to be the third wheel. I made my way through the town in search of a gift for my father. I entered an ordinary shop and went toward the watches. A watch would be a superior gift. I turned to call over a salesperson when suddenly my arm was jerked, and I was pulled into one of the dressing rooms. Hello, pussycat. Chapter 19. What are you doing here? I smiled as Cesario came up and hugged me, before placing a sweet kiss on my cheek. It's a nice day out, unseasonably warm to be honest. I thought I'd ride into town and have a stroll. He admitted. Are you drinking coffee? I nodded and smiled. Tea, actually. Can I get you something, sir? The barista asked as he cleaned up the table next to us. Do you serve lemonade? Cesario asked. The barista nodded, then disappeared behind the counter. Well, I was here with Chain, but I don't know where she's gone off to. With his hands in his pockets, it was his turn to shrug. I saw her outside. She probably excused herself from our company. I nodded. It seemed like something Chain would do to push us together. When the barista stated that Cesario's lemonade was ready, he paid and then came over to me once more. Would you care to accompany me? Of course, I screamed inside my head. Well, seeing as I don't exactly have any plans this morning, I suppose I could go with you. He chuckled and then placed his hand at the small of my back to escort me out of the coffee shop. Once we were outside, we began to walk the cobblestone streets next to each other. As we passed the multiple stores, my hand brushed against his, and he seized the moment, smiling down at me, then taking my hand gently into his. Our fingers interlocked comfortably, and my heart leapt with joy. Together, we continued on our way. When we finally reached his car, he opened the passenger door for me. I was excited to see the vintage car, and this time the top was down. I got in and buckled up. As I watched him walk around the front of the car, I took note of his more casual attire. He had on khaki slacks and a deep navy polo. Once he entered the vehicle, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out his sunglasses. With his shades on, he started the car and reversed, then he reached over for my hand. With a soft motion, he placed a tender kiss on my knuckles. He smiled at me and began to drive away. He looked every bit a classic heartthrob, and it was hard not to swoon. After driving in a comfortable silence for nearly 2 minutes, I noticed that we were driving away from the village and toward the rest of the town. "Where are we going?" I asked softly. "Well, I thought I'd take you to my house, let you get to know me some more," he confessed. "I've also got everything there for a perfectly lazy day in." What?" he asked, slightly amused. "Nothing. Just seems pretty coincidental that you just so happen to have the makings for a lazy day at your house on the same day that you just so happen to run into me in town." Now he chuckled. "If you'd rather go elsewhere, please tell me what you'd like to do." I couldn't keep the smile off my face. A lazy day sounds wonderful. As he drove, we talked and laughed. He was so happy and seemed so carefree. I wondered how Johnny could ever call him serious and stiff. Soon, he turned down a road that seemed to go on forever. Finally, we pulled up to a rather nice house, and I suddenly grew a little anxious. Here I am, alone with my mate. But as Cesario turned off the car and jogged over to my side, he held his hand out to me. I eagerly placed my hand in his, and my anxiety seemed to wash away. I knew Cesario wouldn't pressure me in any way. This was my grandparents' place. I've fixed it up over the years. He spoke before showing me around and pointing out various things. It was easy to imagine a little boy running along these halls, playing in the backyard under the lemon tree. "What are you thinking about?" he nearly whispered. I felt his breath on me. I hadn't realized he was so close. I closed my eyes, trying to stay grounded. I smiled. "Oh, really?" I turned to face him. He placed his hands on my hips and looked down at me. My heart beat heavily. "Actually, you as a child. I can see how this big house could be so fun for a kid." "Yes," he sounded, my words clearing the air. "I enjoyed many trips to my grandparents' house as a boy." He tilted my chin up with his forefinger. "How about I get started on lunch and then we can eat outside? Like a picnic?" I asked excitedly. He caressed my jawline with his thumb. "If that's what pleases you." He disappeared into the kitchen, and I had to lean against a table to catch my breath. I couldn't help but wonder what this afternoon would bring. Chapter 20. Favorite color? He asked, his smile never once wavering. "Mint green, but definitely more on the blue side than the green side." He chuckled. "So minty blue, like robin's egg blue?" I had to nod and suppress a laugh. I don't think guys are supposed to know the color palette that well, but yes, more like robin's egg blue. I smiled. "And how about your favorite color?" He shrugged. "If you would have asked me months ago, I would have said gray or some shade of blue." He admitted before giving me a very charming smile. "Now it's green, just like the slight green in your breathtaking hazel eyes." My face involuntarily burst into a blush. I fought hard against my wolf, who was practically nudging me to stay close to him. I knew he would have seen the heavy pink on my face as he reached up until his hand was cupping my warm cheek. I looked down at him. I was sitting on my knees atop the adorable quilt Cesario had laid out for our lunch. "Next question?" I sighed. "Do I make you nervous?" He asked seriously. I shook my head. "No," I replied honestly. "It's more of my own body's reactions to you that make me nervous." He nodded. "What if I asked you to wait?" What if I said I wasn't ready to move forward physically? With an effortless shrug and without a second's hesitation, he responded, then I would wait. And what if I told you I didn't want to wait? I saw a darkness flash across his eyes, but he squeezed them shut and sighed heavily. I'm sure that was more than one question, Evaline, but to answer you, I wouldn't do that. Never. His eyes were open once again, and I could see the sincerity in them. Things like that can be good, but only when both people are completely ready. You, my beloved, you aren't fully ready yet. He smiled softly before getting to his knees and placing a chaste kiss upon my forehead. How do you know that I'm not ready? I asked defensively. People who are completely ready have made up their minds and therefore have no reservations. They don't have to question themselves. Now, I believe it is my turn. He smiled. Back and forth we went, asking random questions until we eventually moved on to family. How old is Lucas? I asked before realizing I didn't even know Cesario's age. Wait, how old are you? He chuckled. Lucas is 27 and I am 24. I nodded. That meant we had a 5-year age gap. That isn't so bad, I thought. We seem to be on the same maturity level. How old are you? He asked. 19. I replied. I knew he would be doing the math and I panicked slightly. What if I'm too young in his mind? Then I saw him look at me and I knew I had to keep the conversation going. So if Lucas is only 3 years older than you, how old are your parents? Like most of our kind, both my grandparents and my parents changed for the first time when they were 17. They were lucky enough to find their mates immediately. My grandma had my dad when she was 18. There was a time of conflict between packs years ago when my grandfather was the leader. When it was finally over, a small baby boom occurred. My grandmother, however, found it difficult to get pregnant again. Finally, at the age of 33, she got pregnant with Lucas, giving them 2 sons with a 15-year age gap. I sat quietly as he continued. 2 years after my uncle was born, my parents had their first phase. Since they had been together before that, they found each other as mates, and 9 months later I was born. So, my mother and father are 42, Lucas is 27, and I am 24. Very informative. I teased before getting serious once more. What happened to your grandparents? I knew if his parents were barely in their 40s, his grandparents should only be in their 60s. They passed away in a house fire, he stated. They were visiting an old friend of my grandmother's. From the reports, someone left a candle on and the house was lost overnight. Everyone in the house was lost. I'm sorry. He shook his head before giving me a sad smile. Nothing to be sad about. It happened a while ago. We moved on to lighter topics as we continued with the questions, but soon the sun was starting to set. I can't believe we've talked the entire day away. I commented as we both stood. Cesario bent down to collect the remnants of our picnic. If you would like, we can watch some movies or I can just take you back to the school, whichever you prefer. Now I had an internal battle, only this time I voiced it. I really want to stay, but I should probably check on Chain. Well then, call her. I smiled. I don't have a phone. The number I gave you is Chain's, but she shares it with me. I'm confused. Well, we aren't supposed to have cell phones at the school, but Chain's grandfather purchased it for her in case of emergencies. I filled him in. We keep it hidden in case of room checks. He sighed and held out his cell phone toward me with a slight smile. Here, call her if you'd like. I'm going to rinse these dishes and then we can do whatever you'd like. I took the phone and dialed the number. She answered immediately. Chain. I asked. Lena, you're still with him? She sounded breathless. Yeah, we were just about to watch a movie before he takes me back. Are you okay? There was something about her voice that sounded rushed. Okay, well, hurry home after the movie. I'm not really sure I can trust myself to be alone tonight. I found her comment odd. Is everything okay? You sound flustered. You'd be flustered too if you had the day I've had. I knew there was a story behind her words, but I also knew now wasn't the time to question her as I noticed Cesario had re-entered the room. All right, well, I'll be back straight after the movie. Try and relax. We hung up and I returned his phone to him. Everything all right? I nodded. I think so. Chain just sounded like she had an interesting day. Chapter 21. True to his word, after the movie was over, Cesario did in fact drive me back to St. Magdalene's. He pulled up to the school, and we remained seated in the car. "Thank you for spending the day with me, Evaline." He smiled. "Anytime," I replied, giving him my own smile. "I had a lot of fun." "I'm glad to hear it. How about we see each other tomorrow as well?" he asked. "It will be the last time we get to see each other before your classes start back up, and I have to go back to work." The truth suddenly hurt, and I ended up scooting just a bit closer to him. He wrapped his arms around me, and I sighed. "I don't want to go back to my boring life." He kissed my hair. "I know. I guess I'll meet you at the same coffee house tomorrow, around 10 in the morning," I offered. He took my face in his hands, and we looked at each other for a little while. The anticipation of the moment was building, and I could hardly stand the wait any longer. I leaned forward, and thankfully, he did as well. Soon, our lips touched. The initial kiss was soft and full of respect for one another. But almost as soon as we pulled apart and he saw that I was happy, it seemed like he allowed his emotions to take over, and my own matched his exactly. His arms went around my middle, and he lifted me onto his lap. This kiss was intense and full of want. And even though I knew we were losing ourselves in the moment, Cesario still held on to a shred of restraint as he kept his hands on my hips and did not let them freely roam. Our kiss turned into a full-blown moment right in front of the school, until someone tapped on the driver's side window. Startled, we pulled apart to find Lucas looking straight at us, a cheeky grin on his face. Cesario helped me off his lap before we both got out of the car. "Well, if it isn't my nephew and Evaline," he sounded amused. Are those windows foggy?" "Cesario, don't your windows seem a bit steamed up to you?" Cesario growled, and I found myself reaching for his hand in an attempt to calm him down. It seemed to work, but of course, Lucas took note of the small action and his knowing smile stretched even further. "What are you even doing here, Lucas?" Cesario sighed. Lucas shrugged. "Well, seeing as this school is technically on my land, that would make me the school's alpha, or so it says in the old records. That doesn't explain what you're doing here." "Well, I thought the school could use an update on its rules." I looked up at him in utter confusion. Why would the school's rules suddenly interest Lucas? "And what are you trying to update, Uncle?" Once more, he shrugged. "I think it's high time that any students over the age of 18 be allowed to go off campus, as well as stay off campus with their mates or family members." At this, I looked at Cesario. He looked down at me, a small smile playing on his lips. "I thought you two might like that." He sounded confident. "I'm also going to add that any student may attend pack functions, parties, mixers, charity events, and so on." "Could I make a suggestion?" Cesario spoke up. "Of course. You know, I've always valued your input. I think the girls should be allowed to have cell phones. Of course, they wouldn't be allowed to use them in class, but I think it's a safety issue that they aren't allowed to have them. Imagine if something happened at the school." He was trying to sell Lucas on the phones, but Lucas and I both knew he didn't have to do that. "Of course, I'll tell them about the phones," he said warmly. "Now, please tell your sweetheart goodnight, and I will gladly walk you inside," Lucas said to me. Lucas began walking up the stairs to give us some privacy. "See you tomorrow?" Cesario asked. I stepped up on my tiptoes and pulled his neck down until he obliged me by kissing me once more. This time, we kept it simple. "See you tomorrow," I confirmed before stepping away from him. He sent a wave up at Lucas, and I knew he was silently telling him thank you. When I reached Lucas, he smiled a genuine smile. "You're good for him." "He's good for me," I acknowledged. "That's what mates are. They bring out the best parts in you and help you grow into who you're meant to be." He nodded silently. For a moment, I could swear I saw a glint of sadness. "I don't think I've ever seen my nephew so happy," he commented. "Can I ask you a question?" He looked over at me and smiled. "Evaline, you're practically family." "Why do you think I called you niece only a moment ago?" I did recall him saying that, and I realized he was fully accepting me. "Do you think you'd ever want to settle down?" He chuckled, but I could tell it was a defense mechanism. "Everyone has a mate. It's just a matter of finding her," I pointed out. He nodded. And suppose I do find her. What makes you think she will have me? I looked over at him. We had reached the front doors of the school. But she'd be your mate. Who would openly try to push their mate away? He held my gaze. I can think of a few people who wouldn't be too pleased to find out I'm their mate, especially if they didn't want one in the first place. I felt like he was trying to tell me something, but my mind was too jumbled from the kiss that still lingered on my lips. The front doors opened and a woman I didn't recognize exited. The discussion was over, and we simply made our way inside. Chapter 22. Weeks went on, and every Friday, Cesario would make it a point to come into Sparrow Grove for the weekend. Lucas had managed to convince the school to update their rules, and this resulted in its adopting the new suggestions. When Cesario purchased a new cell phone for me, I didn't feel as bad taking it. I didn't like him spending so much money on me, but I couldn't stand the distance, and talking to him helped. We talked constantly, even though our conversations mostly consisted of how much we missed each other. I'll call you tonight. I smiled as I prepared for my last class of the day. I had him on speaker. I'll be waiting for your call, he replied sweetly. I smiled further. Would you be upset if I didn't call? It would be difficult not to receive a call from you, Evaline. This conversation is a bit much, Chains suddenly sounded as she stood up from the table. Please remember that not only do you have your phone on speaker, but I have enhanced hearing. The constant sentiment is a bit overwhelming. I felt bad. It was never my intention to flaunt my relationship. I have to go, I finally said before hanging up. I looked over at her sympathetically. Don't give me that look, Lena. Please don't feel sorry for me. She sighed. How can I not? I said. Chain, you're my best friend, and all I want for you is to be happy. I really think if you tried to look for your mate, maybe. Enough, Lena. I could tell I had hit a sore subject. For the past couple of weeks, Chain has been extremely temperamental about the whole subject. To even mention a mate around her will get you a sharp look. This was made clear the day she became upset with a student in the cafeteria. Most people just brushed it off, but I knew better. It's always the same thing with you, she continued. I held my reserve, knowing she wasn't really mad at me. If you would just tell me what's wrong, maybe I could help you, I said calmly. I mean, really, she began. Why does someone need a mate anyway? Sure, maybe to have a family, but what else do they bring to the table? Someone to support me? I can support myself. Someone to protect me? I think I can handle my own. She shook her head. It just seems like a lot of drama. They come into your life, complicate things, and then... Whatever, I'm done. We're going to be late for class. I simply watched her as she gathered her bag, as if she didn't just give a whole speech on the subject. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Chain Adams? The girl asked. Chain's head snapped up, but she remained in place. A package has arrived for you. Still, she remained unmoved, looking at the girl as if she were speaking another language. I'll take that for her, I sighed. I signed for the package and closed the door. I walked the heavy box over to our table. Chain's eyes were wide as she looked from the box to me. Well, aren't you going to open it? I asked. Does it say who it's from? I looked down at the label. It's from your father. Her entire body relaxed as she let out a sigh of relief. She finally stepped up to the box and opened it. It's the guest list and invitations to my dad's birthday party next week. Kinda short notice, don't you think? I asked as I picked up a stack of papers with prominent names on them. It always is, she smiled. Wouldn't want any uninvited guests showing up. Uninvited? I asked. Rogues. They'd be unwise to attack a place full of alphas, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't ever happen. I nodded. We had to leave the box as we were now running late for class. Hey, I know it's Friday, but do you think you can stay and help me out with these invitations? Chain wouldn't have asked if she didn't need the help. Well, I promised that I would see Cesario tonight, I admitted. But what if you come with us back to his place? Then he might even be able to help us, and we can get it done quicker. She looked hesitant. I don't know, Lena. I'm sure he would rather I stayed behind. I already had my phone out and texted him, hey, change of plans tonight. I am going to help Chain with some invitations. He texted back almost instantly. You're breaking my heart. I smiled at his response. It's easy to forget that my successful mate can be quite endearing when he wants to be. Or you can pick up Chain and me, and we can get everything done and then hang out afterward, I sent. The reply took a moment. I know Cesario has no issues with Chain. They both accept that they're big parts of my life. Finally, I received 2 texts. I do not mind in the slightest. My house is your house, and you may bring anyone you choose to. But I do have one condition. You have to stay the night. Chapter 23. Chain's POV. No. Please, Chani. Lena pleaded. She had pulled out the big guns, using my old nickname. Look, I know you really want to see him, so you two just go, have fun. I can do this by myself. I assured her. She looked at me stubbornly. No, I want to help you, and I said I would. Now, we are going. If you really want to come back, I will personally pay for a taxi to bring you back to school. I smirked and shook my head. She will make for one headstrong leader in the future. I think I can pay for my own cab fare, I replied. Are you sure it won't be weird? No. Now get everything ready. He'll be here in less than 5 minutes. I put the guest lists back into the box and grabbed my purse. Evaline, on the other hand, was frantically running around our shared bedroom as she grabbed this and that. I knew she was internally debating what to pack for her first overnight visit with her mate. I smiled and put my purse down. Here, you sit down and wait for Cesario. I'll pack for you. She was so flustered that she didn't even protest. I went straight to her nightwear. I knew nothing would happen. Cesario is too much of a gentleman to pressure her. I settled on a cute pair of pajamas, nothing too stuffy, but not too revealing either. The set was playful and comfortable. Then I moved on to her outfit for the next day. After I packed her overnight bag, Cesario texted to let us know he was in front of the school. I grabbed my purse and the large box and followed Lena. Cesario greeted us warmly, taking our belongings and placing them into his trunk before opening the doors for us. Soon we were on our way. Thanks for letting me join your evening, I said awkwardly. You're hardly crashing anything, Chain, he smiled. And I am happy to help in any way I can. I watched the buildings go by as we drove. When I turned to talk to Lena, I noticed Cesario reach over and take her hand. He brought it up to his lips and kissed it lovingly. I smiled, but turned once more to look out the window. As adorable as these two are, I could tell it was going to be a long night. When we reached the house, Cesario insisted that Evaline and I relax while he cooked us dinner. He promised we could do the invitations immediately after, and I agreed. All right, Cesario smiled after he had cleared the table. Let's have a look at this list. I handed him the pages of party invitees and sat back as Evaline and I watched him eye the names. My uncle is on here. He pointed out. My heart thumped a bit quicker. Of course, his name would be on there. Even if my father didn't approve of his lifestyle, Lucas Minichi is still a very influential leader with a large pack. I had avoided looking at the lists properly because I knew I would see his name, and my feelings for him would complicate things. It brought back the memory of the day in the shop when he had pulled me aside. Your parents should be on the list as well. I tried to sound normal. Where's your restroom? Evaline gave me directions, and I made my way there. Once inside, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bathtub, trying to steady my breathing. As soon as I closed my eyes, the memory of that day unfolded. Inside the dressing room asterisk. What do you think you're doing? I asked angrily. I had to see you. His eyes were soft and full of sincerity. How did you know where I would be? I didn't, he replied. But I know you're allowed off campus on the weekends. I was hoping my wolf would call to yours. I guess it worked. My wolf was completely satisfied, while I was upset that I had been baited into this situation. I have to go. No, he said firmly as he stepped forward. Not before I say what I need to. Chain, I know I'm not your ideal mate, but I can be. I promise I will change. I have changed already. Ever since you showed up, it's like I can't even see anyone else without thinking of you first. You're the only one I want. His words touched me. As much as I wanted to deny him, I couldn't. I couldn't stop myself from closing the gap between us. Our lips met, and I kissed him hard. He pinned me against the wall, and the moment became intense. Lucas, I whispered. He stopped and looked at me, really seeing me. I was used to attention, but not like this. He was seeing me at my most vulnerable. He caressed my face and bent down to kiss me again. This time it was slower, gentler. I liked it. I panicked. Stop, I shouted, pushing him back. We can't do this. I refuse to do this. I just can't, Lucas. Why? He demanded. Your reputation, and my father, he wouldn't stand for it. I don't care what your dad thinks, he said. It's you and me. Only you can choose to know me on another level and grow with me toward our future. I remained silent. With a sigh, he ran his hands through his hair. Give me your phone. I gave it to him. He put in his number and handed it back. Call me when you decide to live your own life instead of the one planned out for you. And just like that, he left. Back to present-day asterisk. I opened my eyes and found that a couple of tears had fallen. I quickly cleaned my face and exited the restroom. I was greeted back at the table by a smiling Evaline. I've divided the lists into 3 piles. We'll each have a pile, and we can knock these invitations out much quicker, she assured me. Thanks for everything, Lena. Is that all of them? Evaline yawned. I think so, I said as I wrote the last name. I'll have to call my dad's office to arrange delivery. It's late, so I'm going to text him and then call a cab. We can give you a ride, Cesario offered. You're also welcome to stay. I declined his offers. My taxi arrived soon after, and I was back at school. I left the invitations at the front desk and went upstairs. I wasn't particularly sleepy, despite the hour. I cleaned up the room a bit and eventually found myself lying in bed, phone in hand. Like so many nights before, I looked at his name in my contacts, so tempted to press it just to hear his voice. But with a sigh, I turned off the phone and tossed it onto Evaline's bed. I rolled over and closed my eyes, silently begging for sleep to free me from my torn feelings. Chapter 24. Cesario's POV. Once out of the shower, I found Evaline lying on the sofa. She was already in her sleepwear, fast asleep. She looked so peaceful that I almost didn't want to disturb her, but I knew I had to move her, or she would be terribly achy in the morning. With a content smile, I walked over and scooped her into my arms easily. She began to stir, so I simply kissed her forehead and whispered for her to go back to sleep. Once in the bedroom, I placed her down gently on my bed. She seemed so small in the large bed. I covered her up with the duvet and then went to make sure the house was all locked up. When I re-entered the bedroom, I couldn't help but pause in the doorway simply to look on as I watched my mate sleep so soundly. She has no idea how much she means to me or what it means to simply have her here. I finally got into bed myself and then gently pulled her over so that I was now cuddling her. This is all I wanted to do tonight. To be able to hold my mate in my arms filled my heart with so much joy. It only reassured me that she is really mine. Having to go back home to work and be away from her is hard on me as well as my wolf. That's why I had sent her that message earlier. I just needed her here. As I lay there, I let my eyes close before sleep washed over me. I woke up much earlier than I normally would. My wolf was antsy, knowing our mate was here. As much as I enjoy watching her sleep, I adore it even more when she's awake, so I kissed her cheek and then her nose, followed by her forehead, before I finally placed a kiss on her lips. I felt as she smiled into the kiss, then pushed me away playfully and rolled onto her side. Open your eyes, Evaline. She shook her head. I don't want to wake up. I was having the most fabulous dream. What was it about? I asked as I slowly kissed her shoulder. I knew she was smiling once more. There was a party. I was having a really great time and there was a guy. You're making me jealous, I teased as I pushed her hair to the side, exposing her neck. Did this guy dance with you? Yes. He danced with me all night. He was going to kiss me, but then you woke me up. My deepest apologies. But I can't say that I'm not a bit proud that I managed to keep a man away from you, even in your dreams. She lay back once more, now facing me. She touched my cheek. Kiss me, just like you were going to in my dream. I smiled down at her before obliging her small request. We had grown used to kissing each other, so it was no surprise that the once innocent pecks were long gone. When I pulled back, I let my eyes feast upon her radiance. In that moment, my soft, demure beauty looked at me differently. Her hazel eyes turned alluring. I had to fight to keep my composure. If she knew it or not, her wolf was ready, but was she? I kissed her once more, but knew not to carry on further. I quickly got out of bed and offered to take her out to breakfast. She pouted, but ultimately agreed. She asked to have a shower first, so I got dressed while she showered. Afterward, I waited patiently in the living room as she got ready. I looked down at my watch and saw that an hour had passed since we had initially woken up. Suddenly, my phone rang. "Cesario, where are you?" My father asked. "I'm out of town on business," I lied. "Well, whoever she is, she had better be worth all of the mess that you're causing." I shook my head. If I were with my mate, yes, she would be worth whatever actions follow. But, as I said, I'm away on business. I'm actually headed to New York. If you don't believe me, you're more than welcome to come and have dinner with me later on. He made a displeased sound. The reason I'm calling is that we were just delivered an invitation to Alpha Garland's birthday celebration. Yes, well, birthdays do tend to be an annual thing, Father. You will watch yourself, Cesario, he commanded. Yes, sir. Like I was saying, the invitation couldn't have come at a worse time, as your mother is out of town and I'm stuck working on this alliance. Still, you will have to represent our family by attending this party, and you will take your mate. If she's to be Luna one day, the world must know who she is. Father, this is not a request. He sounded angry. It's time you take on whatever responsibilities come along with your chosen future, Luna. My voice seemed to stick in my throat. Yes, sir. I croaked. I wasn't ready to thrust Evaline into this political world. Just like that, he hung up. I placed my phone back into my pocket and slumped back onto the sofa. I'm ready. Evaline chimed sweetly. I'm sorry for taking so long. I stood up and looked at her. No need to apologize, I smiled. You look lovely, Evaline. Now, I think it's time we finally get you to the city. She smiled, and together we left. Chapter 25. As the day was coming to a close, I couldn't help but feel elated over the wonderful day I had with Cesario. The city side of his uncle's territory was everything I imagined and more, simply because I had him by my side. As we walked down the crowded street, Cesario ushered me into an upscale clothing shop. Why have we stopped in here? I asked curiously. Because you, Evaline, must come to a party with me. He smiled. But I noticed that it wasn't his normal smile. This one had a small touch of sadness. Which party would this be? Well, I've been instructed to attend Alpha Garland's birthday party, and I'm to bring my mate. He filled me in without hesitation. Why no? Would you rather not go? He asked, a slight worry in his voice. Oh no, I only meant we weren't originally on the list. I would love to accompany you regardless of the situation. That same smile returned. Actually, my father said he couldn't go because he is dealing with a pack issue. Apparently, finding my mate is coming with certain repercussions. I felt horrible. For one, I was causing his pack stress already, and I wasn't even the Luna yet. For another thing, I had become so wrapped up in Cesario that I forgot about Johnny and the state I left her in the night I returned to school. How could I have been so foolish? I said, Evaline, you are my mate. Any alliance my father was trying to secure will just have to live with that fact. I looked up at him and shook my head. No, it's not that, Cesario. It's Johnny. I had to take a seat before I continued. I couldn't believe I had forgotten something so potentially dangerous. On the night I returned to school, I overheard Johnny on the phone. She was talking about alliances and revenge, and your name came up. Cesario, I'm positive she's going to try to do something to you. She's going to try and make you hurt as much as she thinks you've hurt her. Your sister and I never loved each other, so there is no love lost. He sighed. Don't fret about this. I'm sure she was only speaking in the heat of the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already moved on. Once more, I shook my head. You don't know Johnny. She doesn't just let things go. There may have been no love between the two of you, but you did take something from her. You took away her potential influence, and Johnny loves power. So in a way, you did take away her love. Cesario looked down at me, contemplating something. He pulled out his cell phone. Pick a dress. I have to make a call. His words were a bit distant as he focused on the situation. My apologies, Evaline. Please begin looking for an outfit for the party. I need to make this call to clear my worries. I knew my information was the reason for his concern. I began looking through the dresses while he stepped out of the store. I found a few that were gorgeous, but I couldn't choose. My mind was elsewhere. When Cesario re-entered, he came right over and kissed my temple, his way of silently telling me everything was all right. He assessed the dresses. "They're lovely," he stated. "But which one should I choose?" "I'm leaning toward the beige one." I looked at the gown and smiled. "It is beautiful." "Then we'll take it," he said casually. "Excellent choice," a woman behind us said. "This champagne lace dress is perfect, and I have the ideal heels to go with it." After Cesario had purchased the items for me, we made our way back into town. "I take it your phone call produced good news?" I asked as we pulled up to the house. "It did. It seems your sister hasn't even been seen in town much. Reports say she has been tied up with multiple cases at work." It sounded plausible. Johnny does tend to take on a heavy workload. "I think we should still be very careful. I can't imagine what I'd do if anything happened to you," I admitted. He unbuckled his seatbelt and grabbed my hand. "Evaline, nothing is going to happen to me. I am fully prepared to face whatever she tries." I nodded. He sighed. "If it makes you feel any better, remember that my uncle will also be at the party, so we aren't truly alone." This calmed me down. He was right. Lucas wouldn't let anything happen to his nephew. We spent another hour together before he drove me back to school. I thanked him once more and kissed him goodbye. When I got upstairs, I found Shane. "What's up, Lena?" she asked happily. "Did you grow tired of him already?" I couldn't ever grow tired of Cesario, I confessed. "No, I felt like I needed a girls' night in." "In that case, we'd better hit up the drugstore before curfew, because we're going to need snacks and stuff for spa treatments." I chuckled and followed her back outside. Chapter 26. Johnny's point of view. "Did you do as I asked?" Trenton looked at me, and I could see the shift in his mood. I knew he was beginning to second-guess himself in all of this. "Well," I asked in frustration. "Yeah, I did it, and it wasn't easy, Johnny." He nearly shouted before sighing. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? Think of the consequences." I chuckled. If all goes according to plan, no one will know we were involved. I had to turn on the charm, as I still needed him as a partner. Plus, everyone will be too busy to realize what's happened. "Well, I don't like it," Trenton said. "I wish it were all done with already." I stepped up to him and kissed him. "Don't you like to see me happy?" He growled softly. "You know I do." Then I pulled out my phone to get my plan rolling. "Who are you calling?" Trenton asked. "I just need confirmation that the leaders will be away when we take their son." I smiled before stepping away to continue my call. "Johnny? Good evening, Alpha Minichi. Sorry to call so late, but I was trying to reach you before you and your wife find yourselves out of town." He sighed. "I'm actually going to be here all weekend." Oh, there was a slight pause. "Yes, Johnny, I really can't talk now. I'm preparing to pick up Florenza from the airport, and then I have some things to work out." "I understand, Alpha." "It's just, I wanted to talk to you about the alliance." There was another pause. I was hoping to go to Alpha Adam's party to try and sway a colleague, but circumstances came up prohibiting it. "I suppose I can set up a meeting with you tomorrow instead of going to the party." "I'm not so sure that's a good idea. What about Cesario?" I asked in faux concern. He chuckled. "Not to worry, Johnny. Cesario will be unofficially introducing his future partner to society at the party tomorrow night." Now I smiled a genuinely jubilant smile. That was all I needed to hear. "See you tomorrow, Alpha." I hung up and looked at Trenton. Change of plans. Looks like we're going to Alpha Adam's party after all. I quickly filled him in and then left to find a perfect dress. Chain's point of view. I was so happy when Evaline told me she and Cesario would be attending my father's party. Originally, neither of them was going, as my father's parties are extremely exclusive. Of course, I had permission to bring Evaline, but knowing Cesario would be there helped too. I knew Lucas wouldn't do anything to embarrass his nephew or his pack. Evaline and I ended up leaving a day early. My father had arranged for a car to pick us up, so on the long ride home, I fought with myself on whether I should tell Evaline about Lucas. In the end, I chose to keep it to myself for a little while longer. I would tell her eventually, but I should at least tell my family first. A task that wouldn't be easy. When we pulled up to my childhood home, Evaline looked on in awe. It actually felt good to be back. While we students can always come home on the weekends, Evaline and I were among a small group who only left the school on certain occasions. For me, it was due to having a very busy father. For Evaline, it was because her family just didn't care. I shook away the thoughts of the past as one of the staff members approached the car to open our doors while another collected our bags. "Welcome home, Miss Chain," our head butler said as we climbed the front steps. "It's good to see you, Trumaine," I said honestly. Trumaine has worked here since before I was born. Before we were even shown to our rooms, a familiar voice sounded. "Are those my girls?" I turned to find my grandfather. I rushed over and threw my arms around him. Of course, Grandy hasn't officially met Evaline. I've sent him pictures, but this was the first time she'd be meeting any of my family. "Don't be shy, little one," he smiled, and she walked forward to give him a hug. "It is such a delight to meet you, Evaline." Evaline exchanged niceties with him, and then we were shown to our rooms. I wanted to suggest that Evaline stay with me, but I knew this weekend I might need a room to myself as an escape. As hard as it's been keeping the news about Lucas inside, I knew this weekend would be even more difficult as I'd have to put on a brave face for my dad's guests, one of whom just happened to be Lucas himself. I lay back on my bed and sighed. I knew I had to tell them all. Evaline is my best friend, so she'd be the easiest to tell, but between my grandfather and my dad, I knew the bigger hurdle would be my father. Chapter 27. After getting settled into Chain's home, I called Cesario to let him know I wouldn't be in Sparrow Grove. I suppose it really didn't matter as he is back home himself, but still, I felt the need to tell him. "Well then, Evaline," he said. I could practically see the smile on his handsome face as I closed my eyes and continued to listen to him speak. "I look forward to the party now. Of course, I'll only be there for one reason. To look at the girls?" I teased. "I only have eyes for one particular beauty." "Well, now I'm jealous," I continued. He chuckled softly. "Evaline, there isn't a day that you should ever have to feel jealous of anyone. To me, every other person is of a lesser caliber than my precious mate." I couldn't tease him further. His words had struck an emotional chord within me, and now I was longing to be with him. "I miss you," I nearly whispered. "I wish I were with you right now. Also, my wolf is a little conflicted knowing you are in a house with other males, unmarked." At that, my whole body flushed. The sheer thought of Cesario marking me was a very intense thought I've had on more than one occasion. "I should go, my love," I said, my chest rising and falling heavily with my want for him. "I actually should be getting ready for dinner, but I cannot wait until you are here tomorrow night." He sighed heavily before wishing me a good evening and finally hanging up. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to style my hair, so I pulled it up into a neat updo. Chain soon let herself into my room. Already dressed, she looked gorgeous in a floor-length emerald gown, much more tame than the dresses I've seen her wear, but flattering nonetheless. She happily did my makeup before I got dressed. "You okay, Chain?" Although we were here in her home, and she seemed happy, I noticed that she would go a little distant, as if thinking of something that made her slightly sad. This happened on a few occasions. She looked up at me and put on a pretty smile. "Yeah, Evaline, I'm great. I'm home with everyone I love the most, you, Grandy, and my dad. Not to mention the amazing party tomorrow." I nodded, and soon we were walking down the grand staircase and into the foyer where 3 men in suits awaited us. Alpha Garland Adams, Grandy, and a rather handsome man whom I had yet to meet. "Don't you ladies look lovely this evening?" Alpha Adams sounded. "Evaline dear, as our guest, please allow me to be your escort to dinner." I bowed my head ever so slightly and smiled. "I would be honored, sir." "Now," he smiled, "I would like to introduce you both to my new friend, Alpha Vincenzo Romero." "Vincenzo, this is Miss Evaline De Laurentiis." Not only is she a great friend of my family's, but she is also the mate of Cesario Minichi, who will be joining us tomorrow evening. The man named Vincenzo looked older than Cesario, perhaps near Lucas's age. He was a quintessential gentleman as he lifted my hand and placed a chaste kiss on the back of it. Evaline. He acknowledged, and before I could politely smile and move my hand away. And this is my beautiful daughter, Chain. Chain, my dear, allow me to introduce you to Vincenzo Romero. I watched as the two of them stepped forward, and her father stepped back proudly. He was definitely playing matchmaker. It is such a pleasure to have finally met you, Chain. Your father has told me such wonderful things about you, and I must confess, Garland, he said as he looked over to Alpha Adams, you failed to describe how beautiful your daughter truly is. He smiled. His smile was very charming, with dimples and a perfect set of teeth. It would give me great satisfaction if you would allow me to be your escort to dinner. Chain blushed deeply before ultimately nodding. He too picked up her hand and kissed it before we were shown into the dining room. I watched as Chain held onto his arm. He was very chivalrous as he helped her with her chair. Dinner went well. The food was delicious. Chain and Vincenzo really seemed to hit it off as well, speaking nonstop throughout dinner. Soon, the night was ending and Grandy excused himself. Not wanting to linger as well as to give Chain and Vincenzo some alone time, I too called it a night after thanking Alpha Adams once more and bidding Vincenzo a good night. After I had removed the pins from my hair and stepped out of my dress, I pulled on some pajamas and braided my hair to the side before I washed my face. Once I finished up, I got into bed. I felt like a princess in this spectacular room. About 20 minutes later, a small knock sounded before Chain let herself in and crawled into bed with me. How did things go with Vincenzo? I asked as calmly as I could. He asked me to be his date to the party. The lights were off, and I was lying on my back looking up at the ceiling, but I knew she was smiling. He seems perfect. I sounded. She sighed in a way that sounded almost sad. He does. Of course, I agreed to be his date, but... I knew she wanted to tell me something, but I also knew her well enough not to push her to speak, so I remained silent. I know my father will more than likely expect me to date Vincenzo. From what I saw tonight, Vincenzo seemed interested in you. He did, she agreed. Are you not interested in him? I asked carefully. From what I can tell, he seems like a stand-up guy, one that I would be lucky to date. I knew deep down that there was something else bothering her. Chain, you are my best friend, and all I want is to see you happy. You know that if you ever need to talk, I will always be right there for you, to listen and give you whatever advice I can. I know, and I love you for that, Lena. We should get some sleep. Wouldn't want to look tired tomorrow. And just like that, the conversation stopped. But I knew this wouldn't be the end. Chain was keeping something from everyone, and I only hoped that this burden wasn't too much for her to bear alone. Chapter 28. Chain's point of view. The next day went by in a flurry of events as I showed both Evaline and Vincenzo my hometown. While my best friend was pining for Cesario, I was finding it difficult not to appreciate Vincenzo's kindness. With every thoughtful gesture, from holding doors to his attentive nature, I found myself lingering. But as soon as I would catch myself, my mind would immediately go back to Lucas. My wolf whined. I knew she missed him, and in truth, I found that I missed him as well, his bold ways, and even that nickname. I hate how much I want him. But what I hate even more is how his lifestyle makes me look at my own. Unlike him, I use humor to disguise the fact that it took this long for my mate to come along. He, on the other hand, seems to embrace his past. What bothers you, Chain? I looked up into the warm eyes of Vincenzo. When he isn't busy being a leader for his pack in Texas, he's a doctor. A doctor. I gave him my best smile. I'm fine, just thinking. About tonight? He asked. I nodded. We should really be heading back. We take a while to get ready. He stood up and helped Evaline from her seat before doing the same for me. I can hardly imagine what is left for the two of you to do, as you are already so beautiful. I blushed and remained silent. That is where Lucas and Vincenzo differ. Where Lucas forces me to face who I am, Vincenzo makes me want to be better. I know it's strange, given I just met the man, but it's true. I sit straighter around him. On the car ride home, I was grateful for the conversation as Vincenzo asked Evaline about Cesario. Once back in the safety of my bedroom, I allowed myself a moment to breathe. I pulled out my phone, staring at Lucas's name, my finger hovering over the screen. Knock, knock, asterisk. I hit the home button and turned the phone off. Come in. My father stepped into the room. How was your outing? I took a seat on the edge of my bed. It was good. The weather was a bit cold, but good nonetheless. And how do you feel about Vincenzo? Dad, I sighed. Chain, you know I'm only thinking about your future. We both are, your grandfather and I. I looked up at him. I had let down my father many times, but never my grandfather. Why Vincenzo? I asked. He crossed his arms. Why not? He is an extremely respected leader, he's smart, and he has very few enemies. Of course, any father would want their daughter to be with a man like Vincenzo. And no doubt me dating him would be a benefit to my father's alliances. Of course, your mother would have approved of him as well. At this, I was pulled out of my thoughts. My mother was adored by everyone who met her. I couldn't help but wonder what she would think of Lucas. Then a pain ran through my heart. What kind of mother would want their only child to be with someone like him? Chain. I couldn't look at him. I will promise that I won't just dismiss Vincenzo altogether. I'm glad to hear it, sweetheart. You don't know how proud I am of you right now. He kissed the top of my head and exited the room. I got up. There was only one person I could turn to now. I walked down the hall and knocked on Evaline's door. I found her with a head full of curlers. Hey, what's up? She asked. Why haven't you started getting ready? I needed to talk to you. Lena. It's about a guy. She paused, then a grin filled her face. She turned around from the vanity. I knew it. Miss, I don't want a mate, has finally found him. You've found your mate. She cheered. I told you so. Her words stung. I knew she said it in jest, but right now I needed her to be serious. Yeah, I choked back my tears. I knew telling anyone would be a mistake. I'm only glad I didn't tell her it was Lucas. I couldn't imagine how she would have reacted. I just wanted to say that. I have to get ready. I'll see you down there. I backed out of the room before she could say anything else. 29. I sat back down at the vanity table, still smiling after Chain had left. I knew it was wrong to tease her, but as a friend, I am totally entitled to the I told you so moment, and it serves her right for trying to go against fate. I fished up my makeup before removing the curlers from my hair and finally stepped into my dress. Normally, I would be flustered at how fast the day had gone by, but now I'm antsy at the prospect of seeing Cesario soon. Once I finally slipped my heels on, I was running on pure adrenaline. I would be introduced for the first time ever as Cesario's mate, his future Luna. The sounds of music softly floated up and spilled into my room, and I knew people would be arriving soon. If I knew Cesario as much as I think I do, he would be here already. I finally opened the door to the bedroom I was staying in and was greeted with the sounds of partygoers and music. I looked at Channel's bedroom and saw that her door was shut and noticed the light was also off. She would be downstairs then. I would have to question her about Vincenzo and her being mates later. I made my way carefully down the large staircase, my eyes sweeping the entire transformed living area in search of Cesario. But once I stepped off the last step, his voice filled my ears. How ravishing you are tonight, cara mia. I closed my eyes and smiled before I opened my eyes and turned to face him. He looked so dashing in his formal tuxedo. I could look at him forever, the picture of sophistication, but I quite enjoyed it when he bent down and gave my lips a light peck. I've missed you, amore mio. I sounded fully prepared to have him kiss me once more, but our time alone was cut short. Nephew. The sound of a third voice pulled us from our lovingly reunion. Uncle, Cesario replied. And little Nipote, he smiled, looking lovely as ever. Hello, Lucas. I sounded as if he had bent down, but he placed a kiss on each of my cheeks in a respectful manner. We should go and wish Alpha Adams happy birthday, Cesario suggested before taking my hand in his and escorting us over to Garland and Grandpappy. Chain's family embraced me warmly, but my best friend, on the other hand, was a little away from us in conversation with a group of people, Vincenzo amongst them. I smiled at them and Garland must have followed my gaze. Those two really hit it off, he said with pride. I smiled further, I've noticed. I have it on good authority that Vincenzo will ask Shane to come and visit his pack this summer. Alpha Garland beamed. I wouldn't imagine her turning that down. Nephew, if I may. Lucas suddenly put in. I looked up at him and noticed he had his hand outstretched to me. I smiled before obliging him. Lucas escorted me to the dance floor. The song had already started, but he didn't miss a beat as he led the steps of the dance. So the Firecrackers found herself a boyfriend. He sounded. I couldn't help but let out a small laugh, seems that way. I said, I'm happy for her, I have to admit, these past couple of weeks she hasn't been herself. Oh, yeah, 1 minute she seems alright, then she loses herself to her thoughts and becomes almost sad, I recalled. Something in his movements changed as the dance then became almost buoyant. But as Alpha Garland said, she'll be going to visit Vincenzo over the summer, so she shouldn't be sad anymore. I wouldn't read too much into that. He stated flatly. I don't know, I'm pretty sure they're mates. He stopped us from moving, and we awkwardly stood there on the dance floor before he realized what he had done. He took my hand once more, and the dance continued. Did she say that he was her mate? Well, to be honest, she hadn't. She never actually said she found her mate, nor that Vincenzo was her mate, but then why would she bring up a guy? I guess not. The dance ended, and we clapped for the musicians before Lucas led me away from the dance floor. Would you care for a drink whilst we wait for your mate to return? He asked sweetly. I nodded, thank you. As Lucas disappeared, I looked around for Cesario. He was nowhere to be seen. Evaline. I tensed at the sound of my name. I slowly turned to find my sister. I hadn't seen her since the dreaded Thanksgiving dinner. A lot of things were said that night, and I also learned of my own sister's true colors. Johnny. She rushed over as she pulled along a guy who looked vaguely familiar. She pulled me into a hug. It seemed that no love was lost with my rant about her being a manipulative bitch. I, on the other hand, was still having my reservations toward her. What are you doing here? She asked. Oh, forgive me, I don't know if you remember Trenton, this is my sister Evaline. He smiled and shook my hand. I haven't seen you since you were a kid. I nodded and returned his smile before going back to face Johnny. I didn't expect to see you here, I admitted. As for me, I'm, well, in here with my mate. I felt almost nervous saying that out loud. If only she knew the truth. Then again, a sense of pride also fell out of me as the word flowed so easily. Her eyes went wide before a full smile broke out on her face. Lucas walked over. I apologize for the wait. I couldn't find any servers with their trays, and there was actually a line for drinks. He chuckled as he handed me a small fluke of champagne. I watched as Johnny eyed Lucas. She was connecting two and two, and she couldn't have been more wrong. Lucas, I would like to introduce you to my sister Johnny Gia. This is Lucas Minichi. She looked at me and then to Trenton before she extended her hand to Lucas, charmed, I'm sure. She smirked. It always amazes me when beauty runs in the family. He smiled before he kissed her hand. Would you care to dance, with your date's permission, of course? Trenton gave a small bow of consent, and then Lucas led Johnny to the dance floor. I stood with Trenton off to the side and resigned to my search for Cesario. Looking for someone? He asked kindly. I am, my mate to be exact, I confessed. But I thought dash. Lucas and I laughed, no, that's actually my mate's uncle, but now it seems that Cesario has gone missing. Trenton looked down at me before he looked back at my sister. With a deep sigh, he finally spoke. I can help you look for Cesario. If I recall correctly, your sister and I saw him near the front of the house when we entered. What on earth would he be doing up there? You know us alphas, we love to network for allies. He chuckled before he placed his hand between my shoulders and gently pushed me in the direction he said Cesario would be. I walked on with him, smiling at everyone I passed in the process. We were at the front door, and there was no sight of him. Perhaps he made his way outside. There are quite a few smokers out here talking business. I knew it'd be strange for Cesario to be outside amongst the smokers, but we technically were here in place of his parents. No doubt, he would have to conduct business as his father would, so I followed Trenton outside, and a group of guys turned to look at us. Cesario was not amongst them, but they came forward. "This is her," one asked. Trenton nodded. "Make it quick and remember the rules. I don't want any details." And just like that, he walked away. My heart raced with fear. My wolf knew something was wrong, and I went to run, but one of the men grabbed me. My voice seemed to catch in my throat as I wanted to scream for help, but nothing came out. Suddenly, Johnny's words rang in my head. She wanted to make Cesario pay. What better way than to take his mate? But would even she be behind something this evil? Slow tears fell as the men threw me into the back of a catering van before taking off. Chapter 30. Cesario's point of view. "I don't mean to interrupt," I said to the group before looking at Chain, "but have you seen Evaline?" She shook her head. "I would have bet money she'd be with you all night. She was dancing, but I had a call from my father. When I returned, I was unable to find her or Lucas." Chain looked toward the dance floor. "Well, there's Lucas. Let's go and ask him." She turned to the man standing next to her. "If you'll excuse me a moment." He smiled at her sweetly and nodded. He was clearly enamored with her. Chain and I made our way to the dance floor. "Lucas," I called out. He stopped dancing and faced me, as did his partner, Johnny. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. Of all the people he could be dancing with, it had to be her. Cesario and Chain. Johnny sounded accusing. I ignored her and looked at my uncle. "Have you seen Evaline?" "I can't find her anywhere." "What do you want with my sister?" Johnny asked. Then, something clicked. "Wait, you're not Evaline's mate," she asked Lucas. She must have seen them dancing and assumed they were the pair. "Evaline is my mate," I stated with pride. "Now you can see why I broke up with you so suddenly, Johnny. I wasn't trying to hurt you, but the moment I met your sister, she became my world. I wanted to avoid a conflict that she wouldn't have wanted to be a part of." With watery eyes, Johnny began to look around in a panic. "Oh no. Where's Trenton?" "Who's Trenton?" I asked, confusion mounting. "They took her, Cesario," Johnny cried. "I don't know how, but they figured it out. Evaline is in trouble." I immediately ran out of the mansion. I followed her scent as best I could to the end of the driveway, where it abruptly disappeared. I fell to my knees, shifting in a blur of anger and agony. I could hear a frantic Johnny on the phone nearby, and the sound of someone running toward me hit my ears. "Cesario, you need to stay calm," Lucas said with authority. I growled. "Alpha Adams has been notified and has assembled a team to help us look for her." I looked up at him. For once, the nonchalant Lucas was gone. He was serious and on edge. "I'm doing my best to find out where they took her," Johnny said, trembling. "I'm so sorry, Cesario. I never meant for this to." I barked in anger. She didn't mean for this to happen. She wanted me to hurt. She just hadn't intended for the victim to be her own sister. This was her fault. And if anything happened to my mate, I would hold her personally responsible. Lucas's point of view. "Wait," Johnny had sounded confused back on the floor. "You're not Evaline's mate?" I shook my head, slightly amused despite the tension. "Evaline is my mate," Cesario had corrected her. As Johnny realized the gravity of the situation, she moved away, looking terrified. "Oh no, where's Trenton?" I looked to the spot where we had left Evaline and Johnny's date, but it was empty. "They took her, Cesario," Johnny cried. "Evaline is in trouble." Cesario didn't hesitate. He sprinted out of the house. I acted on instinct, grabbing Chain's hand and pulling her up the stairs. I didn't care who saw us. "Lucas, what are you doing?" she asked in frustration as I pulled her into an office and locked the door. "Lucas," she sighed, "my friend is missing. We need to go find her." "No," I growled, stepping in close. "I need you to stay safe. I can't go help my nephew if my mind is full of worry for you. I have to know you'll stay here safe." She looked up at me with challenging eyes. I knew she wanted to protest, but for once, she didn't. I had wanted to give her space so she would miss me, and from what Evaline hinted at earlier, it was working. Now, I was going for broke. I closed the gap between us, took her face in my hands, and kissed her hard. She tried to push me at first, but soon her hands were resting on my chest as she kissed me back. I stepped away, breathless. I'll be back, pussycat, I smirked before leaving the room. I didn't want to leave her, but I had to put my family first, and Evaline became part of my family the moment she accepted Cesario. Chapter 31. Chain's point of view. I stood against my father's desk as my fingers mindlessly caressed my bottom lip. I had craved to have him so close, to feel his touch, to hear him call me that nickname. That nickname, the very one that irks me yet sings to my wolf. Damn you, Lucas. I shook myself out of my daze and made my way out of the office. I knew I had to get back before someone came looking for me. I had no explanation but the truth as to why I had wandered off right when my best friend went missing. As I descended the stairs, the atmosphere was thick with a stagnant air of uncertainty. The elegant gowns and dapper suits of the remaining guests looked odd against the sudden tension. I noticed a large wolf had entered the group. Given the lack of the obvious person who should be here, I knew it was Cesario. I didn't blame him for shifting. The agony must be unbearable. Then my eyes fell onto her. Johnny. Now I was pissed. I dashed down the rest of the steps and stormed over to the trio standing near my father and grandfather. We need to just calm down and wait, Johnny was saying. I know they won't hurt her. That isn't what we asked them to do. Without a second thought, I acted on pure instinct. I felt the satisfying jolt as my knuckles made contact with her face. You stupid bitch, I shouted. I didn't care that I was wearing an elegant gown and heels. I didn't care that the elite of the work community were watching me lose my mind. You did this, and now you want us to stay calm. Johnny stumbled back, clutching her face and crying. You don't think I'm worried? She is my sister. I lunged to punch her again before a pair of arms grabbed me and gently pulled me away. No, she's my sister. Don't try to act like you care all of a sudden. I looked up, fully prepared to yell at Lucas for interrupting me, but the familiar spark I feel when he touches me was missing. My head snapped up to find a worried Vincenzo holding me back. I turned and searched for Lucas. He stood next to Cesario's wolf, arms crossed, wearing a slight grin of approval at my outburst. We have to inform the girl's mother, Vincenzo said, breaking the silence. Why? She doesn't care either, I grumbled angrily. Pfft, Johnny rolled her eyes. You don't know how wrong you are. Regardless of the drama, my father took Johnny's phone and called her mother to tell her everything. Cesario's point of view. It had been 43 minutes since Evaline vanished. I knew this because I checked the clock every few seconds. I was finally able to shift back, and Alpha Adams loaned me some clothes. The party guests had fled. As we stood in the now empty room, no one spoke. When the front door was thrown open, we all took defensive stances, only easing up when we saw Evaline's mother, Evaline, accompanied by a man I'd never seen before. Evaline stomped forward and, without a word, slapped Johnny across the face, right where Chain had hit her. That's enough, Evaline, the man said, stepping forward. You've always been so jealous of her, Evaline said, ignoring him and staring at Johnny. You did this on purpose. I said that's enough. The unknown man growled, grabbing her arm. Dad, Johnny croaked. Evaline jerked away, giving him a terrifying glare. My daughter is missing, and it's your daughter's fault. I was beyond confused. Everyone else looked just as lost. But Lena said her dad died, Chain whispered. Evaline looked at the man with pure hatred. This isn't Evaline's father. Evaline's father, my mate, did die. This is Johnny's father, Charlton. After that heavy confession, the room fell into a fractured silence. Johnny finally confessed the details. She had used her old pack Alpha to contact rogues for hire. They paid a group to infiltrate the party as waitstaff, take Evaline, and release her unharmed in a week. Rogues for hire usually follow orders to the letter, but they are still rogues. They don't care about our laws. Now, all I can do is sit here and wait, praying they don't stray from the deal. Chapter 32. Cesario's point of view. It was hard to concentrate, but I listened as Evaline spoke. Apparently, she had known Johnny's father, Charlton, from high school. Like many young couples, they thought they were going to be mates and were intimate. When they shifted, they realized they weren't, but they tried to make it work anyway. When Evaline found her true mate, Francisco, she was already pregnant with Johnny. Francisco accepted the child, but a heated custody battle followed. Johnny grew up between two houses, knowing Francisco wasn't her biological father. She grew to resent the love Evaline and Francisco shared, especially after Evaline was born. She used to pick on her, Evaline said sadly. She would take her dolls, make fun of her. I even caught her pulling Evaline's hair just to make her cry. It pained me to hear that my mate grew up in such an environment. Evaline explained that after Francisco died, she was in no state to care for Evaline properly. She used his life insurance to enroll Evaline in St. Magdalene's to give her a chance at a normal life. Johnny had volunteered to take her there, likely glad to finally be rid of her competition. Charlton eventually helped Evaline move back to her old pack to heal. He helped me get a job and move on from Francisco's death in the proper way, she said. Jane suddenly began laughing, drawing everyone's attention. Evaline always told me her sister worked multiple jobs to pay her tuition because her parents didn't love her enough to visit, Jane explained. I should have known a teenager couldn't afford an elite private school for 10 years. Johnny manipulated her the whole time. Evaline shook her head. Johnny has always been manipulative. She even tried to force Charlton and me back together. We all looked over at Johnny, who stood pouting in the corner like a spoiled child. 1 week later, Alpha Adams had been kind enough to let us stay at the mansion while we waited. I was a wreck, roaming the forests day and night. Johnny's accomplice, Trenton, had confessed everything, giving us details on the rogues. The day of her promised return finally arrived. The mansion was buzzing with tension. Even my father had sent men to help, mostly because he realized that by securing Evaline, he was securing an alliance with Alpha Adams. Do you want to check the perimeter again, kid? I looked up at my uncle, Lucas. He looked exhausted. Jane walked over, handing us both coffee. You two need rest, she said firmly. You'll be no good if you can't stay awake. Perhaps a nap wouldn't kill us, Lucas smirked, looking at her. The tension between them was still there, but they were being civil for Evaline's sake. I'm going to ask a favor of you, Lucas said to me once Jane left. I need you to look after my pack for a while. Step in as acting alpha. It'll be good practice, and you'll be closer to Evaline. I was confused, but I had agreed not to ask questions. Fine. Just check in. We headed out for one last patrol. We shifted into our wolves, spreading out across the property line to catch any trace of her scent. My heart hammered against my ribs with every step. Cesario. I heard Lucas's voice howling for me. I sprinted toward him, my paws thundering against the earth. I wasn't even 10 feet away when her scent hit me like a physical wave, vanilla and home. There, fast asleep under a large oak tree, was my sleeping beauty. She looked unharmed. I shifted back instantly, tears of relief pricking my eyes as I rushed toward her. Chapter 33. Almost as soon as I was tossed into the back of the van, it took off. I was in such disbelief that this was actually happening that even tears eluded me at this point. I've been kidnapped. Sorry about that. I looked toward the soft voice. A pair of hands gently helped me into a sitting position. The girl smiled. She was heavy-set with long dark hair and kind blue eyes. Forgive these guys. They're such animals sometimes, she spoke again. I know you probably don't want to hear any of this, but here it is. You've been taken, obviously, right? She chuckled a little. Anyway, we were hired to get you out of the way, so try not to worry so much. We won't hurt you, and I swear that you will go back home safely. I remained silent. What was I supposed to say to that? Anyway, I'm Cameron. Why did you do this? I finally asked. Well, because we were hired to. We do what the client pays for. Life as a rogue ain't exactly cheap, hun. Can't I just go home? I swear I won't say anything. I'll just say I got homesick and left the party. Can't do, chickie. That's not how this works, she said a little ruefully. But hey, we'll try and make the most out of this situation, okay? I spent the rest of the ride in silence. Cameron tried to introduce me to the others, but they told her to sit back and shut up, to which she boldly snapped back. Her sass reminded me of Jane. We reached a motel, and Cameron and I were given a room to ourselves, with the men guarding the door. She gave me some of her clothes. They were baggy, but I was grateful for the comfort. That night, we sat in silence watching old reruns. 1 week later, Cameron and I were so bored that we resorted to playing dress-up to avoid cabin fever. Turns out, Cameron was very voluptuous. You should rock a form-fitted top and show off your curves, I suggested. She shook her head. That doesn't even sound comfortable. Rogue women aren't exactly known for their beauty and sex appeal. Forgive me for prying, but you don't really seem like you like this life too much. She shrugged. It's all I know. I was born a rogue. You know you could always join a pack, I said. Wouldn't you like to have stability for once? It's the dream, she admitted. But what kind of pack would want a rogue? We're seen as low class. My mate is going to be an alpha one day. If it's something you really want, keep in touch with me. When Cesario is in a position to grant you acceptance, you can come over. She actually seemed excited. I explained how pack housing and jobs worked, making it sound as easy as it truly could be if she just chose it. Suddenly, a loud bang hit the door. Time to go. I felt a pang of sadness. I didn't want to leave her. I quickly wrote my number on a notepad and left it on her bed. Kinda hate to do this, but we're gonna have to put you to sleep, she said with an apologetic face. I trust you, I replied. We hugged, and then one of the guys held a cloth to my face until everything went black. Cesario. I could feel the warmth of the sun on my skin, but my eyes were too heavy to open. I thought I heard my love's name, but the sound was too far away. When I finally fully woke up, I was greeted by the sight of the blue sky moving above me. You awake, Evaline? My heart raced. I turned my head to see him looking down at me, grinning broadly. I realized he was carrying me. I wrapped my arms around his neck and buried my face against him. Don't ever leave my side again, I whispered. Trust me, he smiled. I don't plan on it. Statistics on human trafficking and abduction. While this story involves a fictional kidnapping for a week, it is important to distinguish this from the real-world crime of human trafficking. According to global data, total estimates, it is estimated that approximately 50 million people are in situations of modern slavery on any given day. Demographics, women and girls make up a disproportionate share of victims, representing 71% of all modern slavery victims globally. Racial and economic factors. In the United States, data from the National Human Trafficking Hotline often show that individuals from marginalized communities, including Black and Indigenous people, are disproportionately represented among reported victims due to systemic vulnerabilities and economic instability. Chapter 34. I watched unhappily as Cesario entered the house with my best friend in the entire world. She seemed all right. She was in a disheveled outfit, but fine other than that. Cesario carried her all the way up to her room, and everyone in the house followed. Of course, Cesario excused himself to put some clothes on, but we were all too overwhelmed at Evaline's return to notice his lack of attire. My father called for the doctor immediately, even though Evaline assured us she was fine. We forced her to lie down, and fortunately, she listened before she told us what had happened. Despite what they are and what they did, they were rather kind to me, so I will ask that no one seek justice. She spoke the words to the room but looked straight at Cesario. Cara mia, these people need to learn. Amore mio, I said no. And just like that, we all watched how a tiny little mate could put a future alpha in his place. I think Evaline needs some rest, I suggested as I began shooing people out of her room. This made someone pop into my head. All week, Lucas and I have been good. He had this annoying way of catching me in the hall and kissing me without question. Of course, my wolf loved it. We didn't argue, and for once, I actually put some thought into being with him and what life would be like with him. As Cesario begrudgingly began exiting Evaline's room, I stopped him. Cesario, where is Lucas? He left. What? After he found Evaline, he took off. I'm guessing he'll be gone for a while. He asked me to fill in as alpha for him. Cesario filled me in. Any reason you're looking for him? Oh, just wanted to thank him for helping to bring my friend back. I lied as I fought back tears. He smiled and nodded before deciding that he wanted to stay and lie down with Evaline. I left the couple and entered the first room that I could, my father's office. The room reminded me of my first moment here with Lucas, and the tears sprang forward as I wept heavily. He was gone. He left without even saying goodbye. A small knock sounded, and I quickly cleaned my face before Vincenzo poked his head in. He smiled at me and entered the room. "I've been looking for you. Are you all right, Hermosa?" I gave him a tiny smirk. "I'm fine, just emotional right now." He hugged me, but my arms didn't go around him. I was still reeling over Lucas's abrupt departure. "Of course you are. This whole week must have been hard for you," he said. "I know I should wait, but what better time? I wanted to ask you to come to Texas and visit me. At least come just to clear your head and get away from all of this for a while." It took me a moment to fully comprehend all of this. His timing was difficult, but also perfect. "Can Evaline come?" He smiled, his dimples showing. "Of course. Sounds like a plan. I really could use some time away from here. There's definitely something I'd like to clear my head of." "Well, I know you still have school, so I was thinking maybe a summer trip," he suggested. "That's not too far away," I pointed out. He nodded. "So it's a date then?" "Definitely. Can't wait to see what you have to offer." He chuckled, and soon we left. I took one last look at the office before fully exiting. If Lucas was willing to leave without so much as a goodbye, then I wouldn't waste my time worrying about him, especially when there's a guy who's willing to do just about anything to be with me, a guy my family and friends like, a normal guy. My wolf whined, but not Lucas. Definitely not Lucas. Epilogue. 2 weeks later. The day we found you under that tree, I told you that I wouldn't ever leave your side again. As my mate, it should come as no surprise that I plan on spending the rest of my life with you. I love you, Evaline. I know this is so sudden and not as romantic as it should be, but I want us to be truly together. Marry me, cara mia. Allow me to be your husband. I looked down at Cesario. He had brought me back to that same lookout spot he first brought me the evening of Thanksgiving. Now I was home for Christmas break. Coming home was so strange. Mom introduced me to her boyfriend. He's human but knows about us. He's nice and normal, just what Mom needs. Johnny was exiled from this pack as well as our old pack. Turns out her partner in crime found his mate the night of Alpha Adam's party. Needless to say, he turned his back on Johnny for good. Cara mia, your silence is making me nervous. Oh gosh, I thought I answered. Of course I will marry you, amore mio. He leaned over to my seat and kissed me deeply before he plucked the ring from its velvet cushion and placed it on my finger. It was my grandmother's, given to her by my grandfather. They didn't have very much money when they started out, but together they built 2 strong packs and their love for each other never wavered. He said gently as he pulled me into his lap. I'm hoping this ring will be a symbol of our own strong relationship. One day I will buy you a flashier ring, but I wanted to present you with this ring first, as it's much more special to me. I shook my head in protest. I don't ever want another ring. This one is perfect. We talked about wedding plans. I didn't want to get married before I finished school, so we agreed this would be my last year. Of course, the school will accept girls up until they are 21. I just wanted to start my life with my mate. Also, I wanted to have one final getaway with Chain, even if we are both in relationships. Okay, so she's only talking to Vincenzo, who, as it turned out, is not her mate as I assumed. But here's to hoping that she finds the right person when we go to Texas in a few months. As one chapter ends, another one begins, and I can't wait to see what life has in store for us next.